OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
7:30 on this Friday morning. You're welcome along to OTB AM. Packed show for you this morning. There may be no Premier League, but there is plenty of football to get stuck into. John Hartson will be our big guest this morning, looking ahead to the FA Cup this morning and also the return of the Scottish Premiership. We've got the sports pages with Adrian coming your way at around 20 to 9 this morning, and then 9 to 10 this morning, plenty more. We've got Jake O'Donnell's report from Kenya, the second part of that excellent report with the Simon Cumbers Fund from last year, and then the League of Ireland's return with Stuart Byrne. That's coming your way at 9:15, and Deal or No Deal as ever at 20 to 10 this morning. You can tweet us at Off The Ball. You can get in touch commenting on the streams below. Myself and Adrian will be back at 8 o'clock, but before that we're going to be hearing from John Giles and Dan MacDonald in a few minutes, and before that here's the latest episode of Golf Weekly, which you'll be able to catch in full on the OTB Sports app.
Is Finau blowing up? Is Finau a choker?
He is close to it.
If it is a mental thing, like if he was to fix that, and I know he's not one of the younger players, but like what he could achieve, is he a comfortably top 5 in the world player with his skills?
I'd say top 10.
Right.
I wouldn't give him top 5, but top 10 for sure.
Do you see any difference in him on a Sunday?
He just doesn't look like he has the killer instinct. You know, when he gets into a position to take control of it. Some of the shots he hit on Sunday were just, downright bad. Like hunting for flags when he didn't really need to. That par 3 in around the, I want to say 13, was it? He went straight for the flag, hit it in the bunker right, didn't get up and down, then didn't birdie the par 5. So it's like making 2 bogeys in a row.
Yeah, that's right. Is there an issue? Because I can't read his mind whether he's a choker or not. But like, is it that he just makes bad decisions, or that his team aren't like? Is his caddy and should they be working out a better strategy here, like to not put themselves into trouble? Or maybe is that how Finau plays his best golf, by just going for things and feeling loose? And
well, let's see who his new caddy is, Sean. I'd like to see somebody with a little bit more structure on the bag, and somebody who's kind of nearly calling the shots, take his brain out of it and just let him hit it. Yeah, I think that's certainly the impression I got. It was just like their course management just was poor. And you sort of, like exactly that on that par 3, it was like there's no need to go for that flag.
So the season is finally done and dusted, and we know the top 4. Manchester United made it in alongside Chelsea. United with that victory against Leicester at the weekend. Leicester have obviously been in the top 4 all season until the final week, and faded quite dramatically since the restart. And I gotta say, I was very disappointed with them on Sunday against Manchester United. Felt United were a bit fatigued, that maybe they were there for the taking, and Leicester just seemed to lack a little bit of ambition. What was your take on it?
Well, it wasn't a good performance anyway, that's for sure. Because going back a while, they were really, really in good form. Brendan Rodgers was doing a great job. But it happens, Nathan, sometimes when you're not really there, but you're going for it, the team plays in a certain way, then you get there and a bit of pressure comes on, in my opinion. I think that's what happened at Leicester. I think Brendan gave a bit away when he said before the match, whether we win this match or not, we've had a great season. I don't like to hear that. You have a great season when you've won as many matches as you possibly can, and this was a big match. They were going into a very, very big match, and I think it's a bit negative for a manager to say that.
He's given his players an out before the game has even started.
Yeah, but he's given himself an out, and right. I like Brendan. I think he's a good lad. I think he's done good jobs at Liverpool and that. But I was disappointed when I heard him saying that, because it was set up for a loss, and the manager is the man that drives things, and he's the man that creates the goal in the club or whatever. He's just responsible for whatever happens. Nathan, over 38 matches now, a team is not lucky or unlucky over 38 matches, and the manager, like in Klopp's case, has done a terrific job with it. I think leading up when they start the season, I think he did a good job, really good job to get Leicester where they were. But ultimately it was a disappointing finish.
Do you think those comments ahead of the game then had a big impact on the way they played, and talking as well about maybe getting to 75 minutes still right in the match and then properly pushing for a winner in the closing stages? Because it did seem that Leicester, who are such a brilliant counter-attacking side at times, that when Kasper Schmeichel would get the ball from a corner kick, instead of throwing it out quickly, he'd just try and slow it down in the first half. That almost the game plan was, even though United might have been there for the taking and taking the game on its merits at the time, they could have got at them in the first half, that they just left it too late.
Yeah, well, I don't think you can plan a match like that, to be quite honest.
Right.
You just can't do it, because if you say we'll do this for 70 minutes, then you're just giving it to the opposition. You know, you're just giving it to them. They're not earning it, and then try to switch it on. I didn't hear that actually, that he tried to switch it on for the last 15 minutes. You want to be a genius to do that. And actually, a genius wouldn't be doing that. To be saying we go out and play and we take it on as merits. But the first 15 minutes. You know, what's wrong with scoring? If you're looking for scoring in the last 15 minutes, why wouldn't you not be scoring for the first 50 minutes? So you're giving the initiative, and you're telling your players, you know, expect them to be attacking us. It just doesn't make sense. Did
they play like a team feeling the pressure on Sunday?
Well, they just didn't. They didn't really play. You know, like I saw them playing early on the season, and when you're playing early on the season and you're in fourth place, the finishing line is a long way away. You know, so you go out and you can express yourself. But when the finishing line is in eyesight or near you, that's when it tells with the players, a lot of players, and that's when the manager has to do his job to insist on them. Wherever against Manchester United, in my opinion, what a manager should do, look, we're going out there to play the game. We're going to have a go at them. This is what we're going to do. If we lose, it's my fault. So what managers, in my opinion, a big job a manager does is to free the players. In other words, come into the centre-half, come into the game. Because I know from my own experience playing, like when I was manager of West Brom, we had a couple of very good players, but they were very reluctant to come into the game, into the play, you know. And I said, look, you come into the play, and in a few weeks they still weren't doing it. And then I tippled to, and I said, look, come into the play, because their attitude, if I give it away, there, it's going to cost the goal, right? And my attitude, you're not going to give it away. And then I realised, look, if you give it away, it's my fault.
Yeah.
It's not your fault. I'm telling you to do it. And if we lose a goal from it, and that was it. Do you know what I mean? In other words, the manager has to lead by saying, this is a very important match for us. But this is what we do. This is what I want you to do. I insist on you doing it. If it doesn't work, it's my fault. That's what managers are for, and that's what leaders are for. And the manager is the main leader. Okay, you have leaders on the pitch, but the manager is the man that creates the situation, whether it be tactics or anything else. And I didn't hear that last week from Brendan Rodgers, what you said. But I think his attitude was very, very defensive.
Right. From a Manchester United point of view, to finish inside the top four, considering where they were for long periods of the season, and we spoke a lot throughout the season about Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's position and Mauricio Pochettino potentially waiting on the sidelines. Have you changed your opinion on Solskjaer and what he can do at Manchester United?
Well, I think he's done well. Of course, he's done well, Nathan. But you know, you have to go back just a couple of weeks, or the last match before that, where he was he played a weakened team in the semi-final of the Cup, for example, and then he drew with West Ham in the next match.
Yeah,
you know. Well, in my opinion, that wasn't good management. You know, why not get into the final and beat West Ham? You know what I mean? Like, they've done well to get in eventually into fourth place, mainly because Leicester slipped. But why not? Why? I thought it was bad tactics or bad management. The team he picked in the semi-final against Chelsea, I thought was poor, because what he was trying to do was rest the players to get into a spot in Europe, as we know. But why not do both? So all's well that ends well. You know, it depends what way you look on the Solskjaer situation. Of course, he did well to get back up into fourth place. But at the end of the day, the last two matches, did he do well? I don't think so.
Right.
But I'll tell you what, they have brought in good young players. Now, whether he's responsible for that, I don't know. But whoever is responsible has done a really, really good job in that way. And he's done a good job, and he's brought some of the young players into the team.
Well, I guess that's where he deserves the credit then, is that he's actually gone and given them the chance.
I'll give him full credit, Nathan, for doing it. I mean, my take at the time when he was brought in, that they needed an Alex Ferguson or somebody of a stature to do the job, and he didn't do well. But he has picked up, and ultimately at the end, you'd have to say overall, since he's been there, he's done well.
Yeah.
He has done well.
In terms of what they do this summer then, and reinforcements and the areas that they really need to strengthen, on the presumption, say, that Paul Pogba stays at the club, is it a centre half? Like, is the centre half the next step, a player alongside Harry Maguire of real quality that brings them to another level, or do they need quite a bit?
I think they need a bit more up front. Martial did well, but I don't think you can depend on him. Rashford, the same. You know, they haven't got an established, they haven't got a Harry Kane. Well, there's not many Harry Kanes around, but that type of player that Spurs have. Aubameyang at Arsenal has done his stuff, goal scoring. Do you know what I mean? I don't think they've got anybody really like that.
Could Rashford be that player?
I don't know. I keep hearing him say he's better coming in from the left. I mean, the really top goal scorers that you see don't come in from the left, Nathan. You know, my opinion, they're up front. You know, if you look at Aguero and Harry Kane and these guys, they're not playing out wing or wide or anything. They're up front and they're goal scorers from that particular position.
What about, could he have a sort of impact that Salah has at Liverpool, Salah and Mane?
Who, Rashford?
Rashford. I know he's a different type of player.
Well, he's a young fella. I don't see him being anywhere near as good as Mane or Salah. That'd be my opinion.
He's, as you say, he obviously is a lot younger than both of those, and he's
he might
a different type of player.
Yeah, he might come on. I mean, Salah was at Chelsea and he didn't do anything there. Mourinho got rid of him. So you don't know. I think he's got a lot of ability, Rashford, I do. What's his best position, I don't know. But I think he definitely has a lot of ability, and he's only a young fella. I think he's getting better. But I expected him to have improved more than he has done since he's come into the team.
What about Greenwood then? I know, again, even younger at only 18. Could he play in that more central role? So if Martial is potentially the one who might move out, could you actually see Greenwood play in that central role?
Well, I think where he's playing at the moment, now I don't know, we haven't seen enough of Greenwood, but I think where Greenwood is playing at the moment could well be his best position. And I think this kid is the real McCoy, and he's coming in from the right wing on his left foot, as we've seen. But in the match against one of the teams there a couple of weeks ago, he took it on his right foot and swapped into the back of the net. So, like I think the position he's playing in the moment, whether he'd be better up front or not, I don't know. But I think he'd be the real McCoy in the position that he's playing, Nathan. I think this kid is one of the best I've seen ever at his age.
Right. What is it that he has that at his age, that still a teenager, marks him out, that actually can go on and kick on from here over the coming years? What's the skill set he has?
Well, he's good on both feet. He's quick. He can obviously dribble. But if you're both-footed like he is, it's impossible for defenders, because you put him on his bad foot. You know, that's what you're supposed to do. But if you don't have a bad foot, for defenders' point, where do I put him? He's obviously left-footed, so they pushed him to his right foot. But you saw in the match at Old Trafford there a couple of weeks, they put him on his right foot and he whipped it into the corner on the far side. That's what I'd be so keen on him and say he's one of the best I've seen. I haven't seen many players who can come from both feet in the way that he does, and he's quick. I think he's prepared to work hard as well. So he's got all the qualities now. If he looks after himself, obviously, to be one of the best, in my opinion, Nathan.
So, by the sounds of it, would you be happier for him to stay out of a more central role than Rashford? Do you feel he can contribute a little bit deeper or out wide in comparison to what Rashford does on the other side?
I don't know. That's what he's doing at the moment is not down the centre of the pitch, and he's doing exceptionally well, really, really well. I'd have to see him, or anybody would have to see him playing up front to see if he would be any better, Nathan. But if he continues to improve in the position that he's in, I think he'd be great anyway.
Yeah.
Now, whether he'd be better up front remains to be seen. We don't know. I don't know.
Manchester City making an early move today. They've a bid accepted by Bournemouth of just over £40 million for Nathan Ake. Is he the player who can transform them defensively?
I doubt it, Nathan. I like him. I think he's a very, very good player for Bournemouth. But I'm not so sure he's going to be what they need at Manchester City, to be honest. I don't think he has that attitude on the pitch as being a leader like Van Dijk has done, and indeed Maguire, and to a lesser extent at Manchester United. I don't see that in him. I think he's good, and he's a very good player for Bournemouth. But there's a difference when you're going to Manchester City, in my opinion, that they need the best. They really do need it. They need a Van Dijk themselves. Not many of them around, I know, in that particular position.
By the sounds of it, they need a leader more than anything. They've got a lot of centre halves there who have various different skill sets and various different weaknesses, but it feels as though none of them are a true leader in the style of Vincent Kompany.
Well, Kompany was exceptionally good, and there's not many of them around. But they don't have a Van Dijk or Maguire in the team. There's no doubt that. They're weak at the back. Like since Kompany's gone, I think they're definitely weak at the back. Now, whether this lad can fill that particular role, I have my doubts. I don't think he has enough. I think he's good, but not good enough for Manchester City and what they need.
Are City a team that lack leadership, or do you look around and see a few players who, with a bit more experience, actually you would expect to step up into that sort of role next year?
Well, I'm always a little bit wary of the leadership situation. Right. The best way to lead on the pitch is to do your job.
Yeah.
You know, but you see, lads, now most of the lads that I know were leaders. Actually, the first thing they have to do is do well themselves. It's okay shouting at somebody and pointing and doing all sorts of different things. That looks good, but it's not what really happens on the pitch. Now, there are lads on the pitch who have a good knowledge of the game and are doing their own, but the main thing you have to do on the pitch is do your own stuff as a leader. That's how you lead best, not telling other people how to do it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean, Nathan? So some lads you could see playing, like David Silva was a quiet lad. I think he looked like a quiet lad. But what a leader he was when he was at his best, making goals, scoring goals. Do you know, that's the leadership you want, really.
So you don't think one of the reasons for City's decline this season was the absence of Vincent Kompany and the leadership he brought?
I don't think it was the lack of leadership that they missed. It was his ability to defend and defend brilliantly.
Right.
That was his leadership. You know, I've seen fellas pointing on the pitch and not doing their own stuff. And people say, "Oh, look, he's pointing here, he's pointing there, he's a leader," but he's not doing his own stuff. The Kompany, the main thing the Kompany did was he absolutely world-class defender. That was his leadership. I don't know what he was saying on the pitch. I needed to say anything. When you're doing what he's doing, you don't have to say anything, because the players just follow. If he's doing it, then that's a biggie. That's the main thing.
It looks as though there's going to be a bit of a premium on centre halves this year because Manchester City need somebody. Chelsea certainly need one centre half and may well go in for Nathan Ake as well, potentially Manchester United. The other area that a lot of clubs may well look for reinforcement is in goal. Both Manchester United and Chelsea, a lot of speculation around both David De Gea and Kepa. In terms of the value you would put on having a quality goalkeeper, is it almost impossible for Solskjaer and Lampard to progress next season if they have a goalkeeper that they don't fully trust, a goalkeeper that produces the sort of performances that De Gea and Kepa have this season?
Well, I think if you look at the history of the game, Nathan, I can't remember any team winning the Premiership or the Champions League with a weak goalkeeper. I mean, what's made the difference really to Liverpool particularly is getting Alisson in relation to what they had before.
Yeah.
You know, they just had bad goalkeepers who were losing goals. And Man City weren't great either till they got Ederson. I think Ederson is absolutely brilliant. You know, like De Gea was the best in the world up to the last probably 18 months or so. But you can't win. Like I know from private experience myself. I played at Leeds United for years, and we had the late Gary Sprague, who started off as a very, very good goalkeeper as a young fella, and for some reason I think he lost his nerve and started to make mistakes. And I think Don realised, or certainly admitted afterwards, he made a mistake keeping him in that long. It's very, very difficult to win things if a goalkeeper's not really doing his stuff. I mean, if you take a goalkeeper who's really doing the job, Nathan, and he earns you 10 points a season, for example. You know, we'd say he earns you 10 points a season, right? That's great. That's what good goalkeepers do. A bad goalkeeper will lose you 10 points a season. That's a 20-point swing.
Yeah.
That's how important it is. You can't. I mean, we experienced with Gary. I mean, Gary was okay. He lost his nerve, and God, he definitely cost us trophies.
And by lost his nerve, so you're talking about within matches, but did you notice a change in his personality?
Not particularly, but we certainly noticed it on the pitch. You can't do it. You know, like we played in the cup in I think it was 1970 against Chelsea, and it was on the bad pitch, and we went one in front. We were killing them, and just before half time, the left winger got on the ball, and I was quite near him actually. I hit it from about 30 yards, and when you see somebody doing that 35 yards, you think that's great.
Yeah,
you know, that's great. And it went in, and Gary going across the goal, not particularly fast. He was going for it. He was going to dive for it. Decided he wasn't going to dive for it. Going to stop it with his foot. And in between all that, it went under his body. So you go in at half-time knowing you should be way ahead here. You know, you can't give goals away in big matches. And we finished up 1-1. And when you were in that position, when you know you've got to hide, and you're still in the game. You know, and well, it was, probably not. We went to extra time, and we drew to. But they beat us in the replay.
Yeah.
You know, you can't. And also, he cost us some points in the league matches as well. Now, I don't want to be having a go when the poor man is gone, but it's just a fact.
Would you be? And look, it is a very isolated role on the pitch. But would you have found that you were more unforgiving towards goalkeepers than other players on the pitch?
Well, like I was a midfield player, so if I make a mistake, it sometimes cost a goal. But when a goalkeeper makes a mistake, it's a goal. You know, if you look at goalkeepers, we've seen enough of it. We've seen De Gea, who was the best goalkeeper in the world, I think, a couple of years ago, and it just costs goals. Like a midfield player can give the ball away, centre forward can give the ball away. It sometimes leads to a goal, but most times it doesn't. But goalkeepers can't afford to make mistakes. They will now and again, but if you look at the great goalkeepers, you know, they make very, very few. Their concentration is there. Their nerves, they keep their nerve. I think goalkeepers can lose their nerves. I think De Gea might have lost his nerve a couple of years ago when he was playing in the World Cup. We don't know, but what we do know is they're letting goals in that they shouldn't be letting in.
Did Gary Sprake know that ye had lost faith in him? After the cup final in 17.
As players, we were okay because Dom was the manager and we had a good set of lads in the pitch. We never got, apart from Big Jack, would go mad.
Right.
But the rest of us wouldn't, you know, because that wasn't our job to do that. Like if the manager's not saying anything or he's not leaving, then eventually he surprisingly left him out. We played in the semi-final of the Cup in 72 against Birmingham, we were a second division team, and he dropped them that day. Put David Harvey in, and Gary never got in again.
Yeah.
Never got in again. David Harvey was a solid goalkeeper. He wasn't spectacular, but he wasn't making mistakes.
Yeah.
So that's the difference. I mean, the great goalkeepers save you these points. Over a season, as I said, they could save you 10 points, and that's obviously huge. But if somebody's losing you 10 points, you can't. Well, I think I haven't seen a goalkeeper yet. A bad goalkeeper win the Champions League or the Premiership, for example.
Yeah,
I haven't seen it. You may have competent goalkeepers, you know, but they're not making mistakes, Nathan, like that. You can't afford to do it.
We had a mail in during the week from Tony Freck, wondering, John, when you're going to do your best West Brom all-time 11.
Yeah,
I think that'll be for the fourth lockdown potentially by the time we get to the West Brom 11. But he was asking, John, for your recollections of Vic Buckingham, the former manager of West Brom, Ajax, and Barcelona. Sounded like quite a character.
I didn't know him very well.
Right.
I think he was manager of the team when they won the cup. I think it was in 1954. Nathan, we were a great team. Ronnie Allen, Ray Barlow, Reg Ryan, who was an Irish lad, played in. They were one of my favourite teams when I was a kid, and I wasn't seeing much football, Nathan. You know, we didn't see much of them at that time. But they were a team that they played brilliant football. Ronnie Allen was a terrific player. Ray Barlow, terrific player, really, really top class. They won, as I said, they won the cup at the time when it was never easy to win the cup. At the time when it was really, really important in 1954. So I was always a fan of West Brom from those particular days, and I was very lucky that when I did go to West Brom, I met those lads. You know, I met them, which is I always found that meeting my heroes was great.
Right.
And I met Ronnie Allen. I met Ray Barr, right up, a lovely man, very, very. And Reg Ryan, Paddy Ryan, they used to call him. He was an Irish international. He was scouting for the club when I went there.
Okay.
So it was one of the most enjoyable things I had in football. Was actually meeting players that I would have idolised, like most kids did.
Yeah.
But West Brom are a famous club. It was really, you know, I think one of the founder members in the football league, and a great, real solid local crowd. You know, West Bromwich people don't regard themselves as Brummies.
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned that last week. They're more the West
they're
Country.
Very proud of their black country roots, you know.
Yeah.
But a great club over the years, and I'm delighted to see them promoted along with, obviously with Leeds. But West Brom, I really, really enjoyed the people there, and playing for West Brom and meeting some of my heroes.
Well, yeah, it's great that you retained that joy of your heroes as well, considering by the time you went to West Brom that you still had that, and it was still such a privilege to meet them. He had quite a career, didn't he, Vic Buckingham? We're pretty much out of time, but West Brom, Ajax, Sheffield Wednesday, back to Ajax, Fulham, Barcelona, Sevilla, Olympiacos.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, that's either a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah, I think there were a few bad things in there as well.
Sorry?
I think there were a few bad things in there as well, maybe along the way that we don't quite have time to get into now.
Well, you know, the success, like Ferguson was at Manchester United for 25 years, and it's usually on a good sign when somebody's moving around that much. It means they've been kicked out of one or two places. But he was a character. He was, he was a character. And I said I didn't know him at all, but he had his own way of doing things. That's for sure.
That. You know, whatever about the early confusion, it was striking in the Premier League early, in the Bundesliga early, actually, how low scoring a lot of the early games were, and the first half goals were like non-existent, you know, or certainly thin on the ground. And I'd be interested to see, you know, what the impact is, say, with the league here, where, okay, the crowds are smaller than the Premier League and the Bundesliga, but you could nearly argue that they have the potential to have a bigger impact because they're right in your face, you know, and you would really miss them in some grounds, you know. Like there's some places where I think the experience is very different, minus fans, compared to maybe, you know, a Premier League venue where you still have that pristine stadium and they're pumping in some of the noise or whatever it might be. I think, you know, it's going to be disorientating in some of the places compared to what the normal experience is there. So we'll see, you know, because like as you mentioned, it's correct. Like the stakes are so high that you would think, you know, come the end of it, it'll be normal levels of pressure. But maybe in these early weeks, you do expect that there might be a couple of sort of odd games that probably affected by, I don't know, thinking of somewhere like Finn Park or even Oriel Park or wherever, like, you know, it's a really different arena with no one in it.
Yeah, and that title battle that we expected, whether it was a 36-game season or an 18-game season, it is going to be Dundalk and Shamrock Rovers. And because Shamrock Rovers are 5 out of 5 and Dundalk have just that one defeat to Shamrock Rovers, it is going to feel like this sort of match play scenario between now and the end of the season. So Dundalk are first up tomorrow night, and they've got to deliver, because if they don't, suddenly there's an opportunity for Shamrock Rovers to potentially move 5-6 points clear, and there's only 12 games left.
Yeah, it's true. And because of the streaming experiment as well, it's a bit like the Project Restart, that they're not going to be playing at the same time. Probably, you know, they play obviously each other once more, and then maybe the last week or two of the season. But otherwise, all of their games are going to be separate. You know, so they're going to go into the game knowing what they need to do depending on this match play scenario that you're talking about. So like it's going to be very different. Like it's a different league where we normally have these 5 games on a Friday night and 5 on a Monday, and you come in after and you hear what's happened or whatever. You know, it is now going to be a more sense of occasion around some of the games, actually. And like, you know, from one hand, from say a media general fan point of view, it will be good. Like there will be a sustained weekend, but obviously, you know, I am still a bit like, and I was just writing about this for tomorrow, that, you know, there's a small bit of apprehension about how it's going to go behind closed doors or with restricted crowds, purely because, you know, so much of the selling point of our league is the atmosphere and the crowds and the experience. And this is going to like place a lot of scrutiny on the product. And what we have at the moment is, you know, 2 very strong teams at the top of the league, and maybe question marks about the strength of the chase and pack. So, and often, you know, even with TV games and stuff like that, you know, Dundalk will be picked, or Shamrock Rovers will be picked, or, marquee games will be picked. Whereas now, we're going to see live games if you have the streaming package and maybe in TV, games that you wouldn't necessarily see, and you're thinking, okay, how good is this? What can we learn from this? And I think that's going to be part of it now as well, that it's really puts a lot of pressure on the football entertainment value, because often it's the other variables around the match night that really enhance it, actually, in our league. And now it's very much like, well, how good are these teams?
Yeah.
And that's going to be a question mark, I think.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
The OTB Brief. Everything you need to know about sport every morning. Need to get on top of the day's sports news? Well, the OTB Brief is the only sports update you'll need every morning. With all the breaking stories, post-match reaction.
I'm doing my bit to help him, but he's got to do it.
And the best bits from off the ball, all in a 10-minute podcast.
The bulking up, maybe it makes him a bit more stable. But look, I saw it on the range a year ago.
The OTB Brief, online every morning from 7 a.m. on otbsports.com or the OTB Sports app.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
It's a minute past 8 on this Friday morning. You're very welcome back to OTB AM. It is Eoin and Adrian with you right the way through until 10 o'clock this morning. And plenty coming your way, not least John Hartson on the FA Cup in about 15 minutes' time. And then in the next hour, we're going to have Stuey Byrne looking ahead to the resumption of the League of Ireland season. Adrian, how are you getting on?
Flying it on, thanks, yeah. Looking forward to John Hartson a bit later on. He always tells it like it is, obviously. So looking forward to get his take ahead of the weekend.
Which telling it like it is statement are you most looking forward to? Which element of this conversation?
There's always so many of them with John. And there's so many things to talk to him about. And by the way, if you're watching or listening this morning, you want to put anything to the man himself, we're open for that as well. But the Gareth Bale stuff is probably the stuff I'm most interested to. It's probably one of the most interesting stories in sport at the minute, isn't it? Like my view is that he's just flitting away, like one of the best footballers, arguably one of the best footballers on the planet at the minute, is just flitting away his career. Like whatever about the financial side, surely as a former footballer and somebody who tells it like it is, he'll be on the side of get back on the pitch, Gareth.
I suspect so. I suspect it's frustrating as a Welsh supporter seeing what's happening down there. We're going to be getting into that deal or no deal as well. And as Adrian says, we'd love to hear your opinions on the Gareth Bale situation and anything you want to put to John Hartson as well. Tweet us at Off the Ball or comment on the stream below. It's been a big week for me, Adrian. Before we get into other sports stories, I have an admission to make. It was, if you were watching OTB AM this week, you may have noticed that I was down home in Kerry for the week. Part of my task when I was down home was to purchase a new car, and I successfully did so. Adrian, no need to congratulate me or anything like that.
Well done. I welcome to the club, on.
Thank you very much. Got the job done. So yesterday was a big night for me. First time behind the wheel of my own car, driving it all the way up to Dublin. So kind of look at the car, you make sure everything is well set, drive my licence, insurance, tax, all that sorted.
Big test.
Seatbelt on, that's step number one. Important. Pull out of the driveway, absolutely fine, and I'm away. I'm like, this is absolutely fantastic. And I get on the road to Limerick, just outside Castle Island, on the way up, and I'm like, right, we've hit the big time now. Nicely, newly tarmacked roads, good stuff, and I come off a roundabout, and all of a sudden cars start passing me out. And I'm like, oh God, this is with the big boys now. I'm going particularly slowly here. And I'm like, hold on a minute. My car is losing power very, very quickly. Have I made a terrible purchase? Are the people beside me, do they have more strength in their right leg than I do? Am I not pushing the accelerator hard enough? Am I in the right gear? And I'm like, I am. And things start to chug along then. And I'm like, this car that I've just bought is about to give up on me. What a terrible, terrible day this is. I need to get on to Tommy, I need to get on to Adrian. I'm not going to make it up to Dublin in time. I'm just not going to make it up. This is an absolute disaster.
This 1963 Ford Focus has, I don't know what's happened, it's given up the ghost.
Something along those lines. And I'm like, what is going on? I'm like, oh my gosh. Obviously I can't take out my phone. I don't have my hands-free set up and all that. And I kind of look and I'm like, the speed is starting to dwindle. And then I look beside it, and the kind of ticker beside it isn't dwindling at all. It's the petrol, and it is already at zero. And I'm like, apparently you need petrol to drive a car.
So
the one thing, everything was sorted, seatbelt on, checked my tyres, everything. I didn't have petrol in my car, so I'm stranded. I'm very, very lucky that the road in which I was driving was uphill, pulled in, did a U-turn, and it was essentially like in Breaking Bad when they're in the middle of the desert, kind of chugging my car along, just trying to get the last inkling of juice out of it to get to a petrol station. But I survived. It's okay. I managed to make it to the end. So that's the moral of the story this morning, kids, is put petrol in your car, because cars require petrol. Is one thing I've discovered. So it's a learning experience for everybody over the last couple of days. Just wanted to get that off my chest to try and be straight about that this morning.
You were right. I have some questions on it. I mean, you might not be overly surprised to hear that. So you were running out of petrol and then you turned the car around on a hill, so to get the momentum of the hill to get back to a petrol station, was that?
Well, if I kept going, it wouldn't have been a petrol station for like half an hour. So I would have been stranded. I was like, the only way to get to safety is to turn back. So I pulled in, took out my Google Maps and was like, oh, there's a petrol station right there. So, good thinking, quick on my feet and all that sort of thing, as I'm sure you'll appreciate.
Now, the next question is, you left the most populated area of the country, which generally then you can assume has the most access to the motor market to return home to rural enough sort of an area to make the purchase. What's the thinking there? Was it you had to get a KY reg? Is that what you're saying?
It's not a KY reg, actually. It's overpriced market up here. Also,
right. What county is on the reg?
Waterford, actually. It's the real reason, as people probably realise at this point, is a severe lack of knowledge when it comes to anything with four wheels, anything with two wheels, actually, anything with a wheel attached with it all. I've got 0 to maybe 0.5% knowledge on any of these things. So with certain contacts at home, basically,
you needed somebody to
can you give me a hand here, because I haven't a clue what I'm doing. So that was the first one. But we are here, we are safe, and we've managed to get the show on the road this morning.
Well, listen, we're on.
One of the things that we're going to be chatting about a good bit later on, and it's across all the back pages this morning, and it's the big story from the Premier League really last night, is that the Newcastle bid is done and dusted. There will be no Saudi Arabia involved in the Premier League next year, unless there's a last-ditch bid and something extraordinary happens between now and the next season of the Premier League. It's not going to happen, so we're not going to have another state meddling with Premier League affairs. This hasn't gone down too well with all Newcastle fans, Adrian.
No, I've had a bit of a sense of it. I was looking at some of the Twitter feeds from some of the journalists that, oddly enough, a lot of them would have covered Ireland over the last number of years, so we'd be familiar with them, and I'd be in the habit of sort of seeing what's going on with them and looking at some of their replies to, because this story's been dragging on for so long. I mean, the takeover of Newcastle has been dragging on for years and years and years, and I get the fact that they're feeling a bit frustrated that Mike Ashley remains in charge, but like even on TalkSport this morning, they're talking about the heartbreak of Newcastle fans at this deal not going through. Like, I just wonder about the heartache. You know what I mean? Like, I wonder about where the line is in terms of who you would want owning and running your club. I wonder about the thirst of sports fans and where the line is between what's right and what can deliver success. Like, I think it's without question that had the Saudi takeover of Newcastle gone ahead, that would have turned into obviously one of the most financially sound clubs on the planet, and so it would have been in league with the big boys. They'd be pushing for top four in the Premier League. They'd be pushing to win the thing. You would think in no time at all. They'd be pushing for Champions League. So, like, I get all that, and I understand, like, we've all been there. Like, every single sports fan on the planet considers themselves to be the most put upon, I think, in general. Like, the most screwed over by referees, the worst manager, the, players that try the least, and the owners that are the tightest, and all these sort of things. And maybe Newcastle have more reason than most to feel that. But I do wonder, like, it struck me actually this morning in the shower, Eoin, of all places, that Paddy's words about, I mean, he was talking about Kerry fans, but I'm going to sort of say he's talking about sports fans in general. They are effing animals. Like, he was right. He was like 20, 30 years ahead of his time. I think in that regard that the thirst and expectation of fans generally, and I know it's the, when you watch sport or you follow a team, the heartache comes with it. And, there's 5% of you that knows that that's what's coming anyway. And you indulge yourself and you get carried away with the disappointments and being the most put upon team. But so I accept that fans are effing animals. I think he was right. And I just wonder where the line is.
What do you think? What do you think? Where is that line at? And if you were a Newcastle fan this morning, can you put yourself in their shoes and sympathise with their position at all?
It's literally the lesser of two evils is what they're left with. And I get that that Newcastle fans want Mike Ashley out of the club. It's sort of an argument. But whether the answer to that is bringing in a regime where, the punishment for the crime of being gay is death, I'd be less convinced about.
And that, for you, is the reason why Newcastle fans probably need to get a bit of a reality check this morning. Is there a specific case last night where you're is it the vox pops? Is it the kind of views on Twitter? What is it that kind of painted this in very stark terms to you that perhaps Newcastle fans kind of fall under the Paudie O'Shea remit of animals?
Yeah, I was kind of surprised that I was kind of surprised. And look, this is purely anecdotal because I don't know what sort of percentage have Newcastle fans been polled to say how many of them actually wanted this takeover to go ahead versus how many didn't. So I don't really know sort of statistically exactly what that number is. Just anecdotally, I see a lot of fans being heartbroken by the fact that this entire thing isn't going ahead, and it just got me to thinking about. Fans ultimately really don't care about the price of success. I don't know. I just think there has to be some sort. I don't know. Is this a recent thing? Is it a Newcastle specific thing? If this was to happen at Liverpool, would they be up in arms about we don't want our club taken over by a regime like this? Or is it just a case that and it isn't. I'm not saying it's just football, by the way. I think that these questions are more likely to come up in football now, right? Just the way the entire sport is set up, and there's a culture of massive investment in football, and the wealthy want to prove to everybody else how wealthy they are. And this is, I've got 300 million lying around, so this is the place that I'm going to invest in, and it makes me look good. It's the yacht thing, isn't it? Having a yacht to somebody like myself or your cell phone or a car, it turns out, is the ultimate sort of sign of wealth. But once you're wealthy, having a yacht is no good. You need to have a yacht that's 50 feet longer than your neighbour. So I suppose there's an element of that, and obviously we know the rationale behind a regime like Saudi Arabia and why they would want to get involved in that to promote the country as a legitimate destination. So that's all understood. I just do wonder about where the line is with fans and why. There isn't. You can't replicate this same conversation when it comes to GA because the same dynamic is not there. You can't largely. Maybe with a couple of exceptions around the planet, you can't really replicate it with rugby just yet, but it might be heading there sometime soon. I just wonder where the line is with fans.
We'll come back to that in the papers this morning because it's a very, very interesting conversation. I think you can sympathise a little bit with their situation given the Mike Ashley presence, and maybe that's a little bit too forgiving. That maybe a lot of the disappointment last night was simply because they won't have the financial wealth that's coming from the Middle East into their club next season, and I'm sure there's a bit of both in many cases as well. A bit of breaking news for you on this Friday morning. Over in the AFL, first of all, Collingwood FC have announced that Cork youngster Mark Keane is making his AFL debut this weekend for the club, so that's one to keep an eye on. And in golf, big news that Padraig Harrington and Francesco Molinari have withdrawn from the PGA Championship. So neither had played in the PGA Tour this season. PGA Championship was said to be the first of three majors, and it takes place on Thursday. OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Let's tell you what's coming up this morning on OTB AM. The full live schedule is going to be John Hartson in just a moment. He is standing by. We're going to have the sports pages right after that at around 8:40. Plenty more on the Newcastle situation. Rugby's calendar is covered across the back pages, and Kieran Donaghy has had a lot to say about the anonymous hotline that the GPA had mentioned earlier on this week. In the second hour then, OTB in Kenya, as you've seen there with Jake O'Donnell, we're going to have Stuey Byrne on the resumption of the League of Ireland, and Deal or No Deal is back with another special edition at 20 to 10 this morning. Tweet us at Off The Ball if you've got any questions for John Hartson, and he is with us now. John, how are you getting on?
I'm very well, thanks. Good morning.
So, big weekend this weekend. We'll get into the Scottish Premiership in just a moment, which is back. The FA Cup final, though, it's your former club, going against your former teammate in Frank Lampard. I don't know where to start here. Will we start with Lampard? I mean, it's been a season where you have to say he's done incredibly well with the situation that he's been in, with no transfer window coming into this season. At the same time, it almost seems like the tables have turned immediately at the end of the year, given all the wealth that Chelsea have now splashed and the added pressure that potentially comes with that.
Well, yes, of course, expectation levels all of a sudden rise tenfold, don't they, when you start spending money? That's when the pressure comes on the manager, because you've got to prove that, you've done good business in the market if you're going and spending 60, 70 million pounds on a player, a forward, and he flops, as we've seen many a times with loads of players in the past. Then the buck stops with the manager, although the recruitment team as well would be part of that. But no, Chelsea are already. I think Frank Lampard's actually overachieved. I think to get into fourth position in the Premier League, they've already secured Champions League football for next season. And as far as Arsenal are concerned, they've had another poor season, finishing 8th in the Premier League. Of course, if they win the FA Cup, they will have a chance to go into the Europa League. But no, it'll be an interesting game because Chelsea can almost relax, if you like, although Frank won't be treating the game very relaxed because he'll want to win his first trophy as a Chelsea manager. But as I said, Chelsea have already done exceptionally well by securing Champions League football for next season. That could entice one or two players to come and play for Chelsea because all the top players now want to play in the Champions League. And of course, you've got the talking point over Aubameyang at Arsenal. I'm not too sure whether, people are saying, well, Arsenal have to win this because it's Europa League. Listen, Leicester and Spurs are playing in the Europa League next season as well. So, as I said, we'll see what happens.
On that Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang situation, it's an unbelievably important case here for Arsenal to keep him. It's as important as anything that they will do in the transfer market this summer in terms of bringing people in. The season that he's had, John, has been remarkable. Where Arsenal lie in chances created is way down the table in the Premier League, but he still went into the final day with a great opportunity of winning the Golden Boot. He is outperforming the chances that have been created for him. He is outscoring when it comes to the opportunities that have been put on his plate. This guy, perhaps we actually don't appreciate just how vital he is, even in the context of other Premier League strikers, in terms of what we've seen over the last few months.
No, he's an outstanding player. He's a goal scorer. He works his socks off. And even though, Arsenal were sort of languishing in 7th or 8th position, his attitude was spot on. He was running his socks off. He was working back. He was scoring goals. He was creating chances. He is an outstanding player, and he won't be cheap for Arsenal to keep him. It's just whether or not Aubameyang, wants to go and play for a Champions League team or what other offers are on the table for him. But I'm not too sure whether winning the FA Cup final will make a huge difference. I think possibly he may well have, made his mind up to stay. I think Mikel Arteta might have made a big difference in terms of his decision. He seems to be enjoying his football, playing alongside Lacazette and Saka and Pepe and these guys. So, that's an intriguing one to see, with another 11 months or so left on his contract, what Aubameyang actually does. Will he sign on for another couple of years? Will he play the FA Cup? Will it be his last game? Because Arsenal, I would imagine, may have to try and cash in if he tells them that he wants to leave, because he's only got a year left in his contract, and there will be clubs out there that will want to pay some money for him. It's just a case of Arsenal might just try and cash in if he tells them that he wants to leave. So, it's important in terms of what decision he makes in terms of Arsenal going forward, because you can build a team around Aubameyang. He's that good.
For sure. How impressed or otherwise have you been with that cohesion that has developed under Mikel Arteta then? You've obviously played in strike partnerships. What it is nowadays, obviously, is trio up front, it tends to be at the moment. And it has seemed that himself and Lacazette have a bit of a telepathic understanding, but perhaps that's not enough. Perhaps you need Pepe to come in, and it needs to be a trio up front who can almost work in tandem with one another.
Well, I'm not so sure whether the front players is a problem. I think they'll score goals. I think Lacazette will score. I think Pepe. I think there's a player in there. I think he will become good. I see something really good stuff that he does, and other times he flatters to deceive a little bit. I think Saka is a really good player. Nketiah, youngsters coming through. Obviously, Tini, just finding his form, if you like, finished the season very, very well. I think it's defensively Arsenal need to have a big shake-up, because I'm not too sure whether Mustafi, Luiz and Kolasinac are the answer centrally. Defensively for Arsenal, they will give the opposition chances, and you can't go into a game thinking, well, we need to score 3 or 4 goals every time we play to win this game. Because you're all saying that they were outstanding against Manchester City in the semi-final, but can they be consistent? I'm not too sure. So if Arteta's done very well. I think he's settled things down at Arsenal without pulling up any trees. They've still finished 8th, so there's still a little bit of work to do there. But certainly for me, it's defensively is your major issue at Arsenal. I think going forward, yes, they could do with another midfield player, but going forward, I think they're reasonably strong. It's just defensively worry about them,
Just one more on Arsenal, John, for me anyway. Like you mentioned the defensive frailties that they have, and those frailties exist in areas of their midfield as well. Away from that then, how much of this is an attitude and a culture problem at Arsenal with the lapses that they show in defence and the weakness that they often show in midfield? Like, I think the Mesut Ozil situation has become almost the epitome of poisonous elements within the Arsenal dressing room. To a lesser extent, the Matteo Guendouzi situation speaks to the same. How important is it that whatever they do in the transfer market, they're signing the right characters as much as the right footballers?
Well, I think to question his character, is quite strong to go in and question a character of a player. But I think there's been evidence of Ozil and Guendouzi, obviously, showing that little bit of disrespect to the manager. The new manager, when somebody new comes in, automatically, naturally, you want to impress the new manager. You don't go the other way, like they've done. You want to go out there, you want to run around, you want to show the manager, look, I want to get in your team. I didn't quite get on too well with Emery, the other former manager, but, and it's unbelievable to think that. But what I would say is, I don't think he deals with sort of slacking very well, Arteta. I think he's dealt with the situation. He's left Guendouzi out of the whole situation. Ozil hasn't featured at all. I think he has gone in there almost Arteta and said, look, it's my way or the highway. If you don't fit into the criteria that I want to play and the way I want to train and the way I want to set the team up, you won't be in my team. And I think he's been very strong already with some of the signs that he's shown since he's gone into Arsenal. He's looked at the situation. He's gone, Guendouzi's not for me. Listen, he may well bring him back. I don't know, but he's already shown. He said he's not for me. He's left him out. Ozil hasn't featured hardly at all. So they're looking for a buyer for Ozil, but he's got 1 year left in his contract. So I think Arteta has sort of stamped his authority, and he has sort of made the players be known that he'll have no messing around. He wants to train like they play. He wants a professional attitude around the whole club, and I think he's done it very well in that sense. But I think you're right. I think when you're signing a player, you're always looking for the right types with the right attitude and the players that can fit into your system. That's imperative if you're going to move forward.
John, just looking at that Guendouzi situation, like in some ways it's maybe the easy thing to do, right? Like Arsenal, as Eoin was kind of alluding to there, probably have a bit of a culture issue or have had for a number of years, and that needs weeding out. Like in some ways it's the easy thing to do to say this guy is going to be the figurehead of this and I'm going to send out a message to the rest of the squad by doing this. The more difficult thing And maybe the better thing for Arsenal to do over the longer term would have been to have, because I think his Guendouzi's quality is not really in question. That if it was a player that you could get his attitude correct, it's the harder thing to do to bring him back in. In terms of Arteta's approach on that, what's your take? Like, I mean, getting that guy focused and playing for Arsenal regularly would be a really big positive for them.
Yeah, no, I think you make a good point. I think you make a really good point. But what you got to understand is not all managers are the same. Not all managers deal with players in the same way, and we don't know. You know, we are not party to what happens on the training ground and what Guendouzi is like around the place, and how he deals with coming off, or how he deals with being on the bench. Is he a bad influence around the dressing room? And Arteta's decided to take action and to drop him, basically leave him out in the cold. But as I said, he may well come back in. But no, I think it's an art if you can put your arm around a player. I had many problems with managers, and the one thing you don't try and make it is personal. If you're not doing your job right, or you sometimes Arsene Wenger, he had a reputation, Arsene Wenger, of being fairly soft with the players, didn't he? He would find a way to talk to them, put his arm around them, and then slowly bring them back to the fold. Whereas Arteta's gone in then and said, right, I need to make an immediate impression. If players are not working for me, if they're not doing what I expect them to do, if they're being lazy in their whole demeanour, then this is the way I deal with it. This is the way Pep Guardiola dealt with it. Because you look at Sane. Sane was left out of the. I think he was left out of a major tournament because he dropped out of the Man City team simply because he wouldn't track back. For all his talent, Sane at Man City, who's just moved on, Pep Guardiola left him on the bench because if he wouldn't work in tandem with the team, if he wasn't in sync with the other players in terms of tracking back and working forward and up and down that left-hand side, well, he's not in my team. And I think nowadays, the work rate and the work ethic of a team, everybody has to work. You can't carry players nowadays, whereas years ago, you had a bit of a lazy centre forward, or you might have a lazy right winger who'd walk back and not sprint back, if you like, when your team was in trouble. Nowadays, the way the game has gone, it's so fast now, and, with the sports science, players are extremely fit. You can't carry people now. And maybe Arteta's gone in and it says, Ozil's a waste of space anyway, in my opinion, because, the contract that he's signed, good luck to him with that contract. But the bottom line is for him to have shown the lack of respect towards his teammates. For me, he doesn't deserve to put an Arsenal shirt on, however clever he is in possession, as people say. So Arteta's gone in and he said, right, from the very word go, this is how I'm going to do things, and that's the way he's dealt with things. But, you do have a point. Some managers would deal with it in a different way. But Arteta's very much his own man, and he's gone in there and done it his way.
Yeah, you just said there, John, you were saying that at times you had issues with managers. Was it that way around, or did the manager have an issue with you?
Well, it was a bit of both, really. Sometimes if I got taken off, then I would take objection to that, and I would voice my case in the dressing room afterwards. But the bottom line is, all right, the manager's always right. The manager's always right, because I've had plenty of, ups and downs in managers. I never used to get on great with Bobby Gould, but I get on great with Bobby now with the Welsh team. Ian Rush, Mark Hughes and Dean Saunders were keeping me out of the team, and I thought I should be playing. So I'm going in at half-time thinking, why aren't I playing? And he's like, well, Ian Rush is playing for Liverpool, Dean Saunders is in Galatasaray, and Mark Hughes is at Manchester United, John, and you're a sub for Arsenal. So the manager sometimes makes great points, and as a player, you should always want to play, and you should always voice your opinion. Never be happy coming off. Never be contented when the manager takes you off. Have your say, because ultimately, if you believe in yourself, I was never happy coming on. I didn't want to come off. I didn't want to miss games. If I'd scored the previous week, I want to play the next week. I don't care if you want to rest players. No, I don't want to rest. I'm fine. So ultimately, you have your words with your manager, and if you're both grown men as football is all about. It's not for shrinking violence. It's for good characters, grown men. You go in and knock his door of his office and you say, Gaffer, if I was a little bit out of order on Saturday, I maybe should have come to see you rather than have an argument in front of all the other players. And you're the boss. Whatever you says goes. I shouldn't have answered you back. You go in, you clear the air, and bang, you're back in the team the next week, or you're not in the team. I just think sometimes people pussyfoot around little arguments and little pushes and shoves as you're walking off the pitch. This happens all the time. In the game. Managers actually quite like it when players dig each other out in the dressing room, as long as it doesn't go over the top and there's no physical contact. If it's verbals and pointing the finger and this, that and the other, managers quite like that. Rather than them do it every week, they'd rather turn around and say, look, at least my team care. You've shown today that you care about losing. You've shown today you care about the centre-half not tracking back or not being in line with the other centre-halves. You were lazy. You were further back. You kept them on side. So the lads dig each other out in the dressing rooms. That's absolutely fine. Deal with it. That's the modern game.
You said there that Wenger had a reputation for being perhaps a little bit softer spoken than some of his contemporaries at the time. Did he ever have that ability to show a bit of fury in the dressing room?
Well, I'm sure he did, but I only worked for 2 years under Arsene Wenger, and I moved on to West Ham. But Arsene Wenger just had a way about him that he made the players absolutely idolise him. His methods on the training ground, the way he spoke to people, the way he took people to one side. He was very, very intelligent, very knowledgeable on the game. I'd never heard him swear, Arsene Wenger. He was just an absolute gentleman. And he was a one-off, of course. You can't compare Arsene Wenger and Sir Alex Ferguson, can you? You know, you hear about the hairdryer treatment and the players walking up the tunnel at half-time, absolutely terrified if they've had a poor first half to go and face the manager. Whereas I think with Arsene Wenger, the way that he was with players, he dealt with it in a different way, and not everybody's the same. You know, not everybody shows their temperament in the same way. But I think I would imagine Arsene Wenger, you know, would have had a different side to him if he needed it, but I certainly didn't see it. He basically left a lot to his players. But when I was there, we had great leaders like Tony Adams and Martin Keown and Ray Parlour and Bergkamp Wright. He basically ran the dressing room, really.
Well, who was the harshest manager you played under at club level then?
Well, I think Martin O'Neill was very demanding. I think if you played well and you scored and, you know, you played the next week. If you didn't and, you know, you didn't play as well as you could, if you weren't up to standard, then, you know, he'd have no hesitation in taking you out of the team. It's all about standards, you know, for some managers. And I think sometimes when you've got a successful team, listen, there's no doubt Jurgen Klopp, even the great players like Mane, Firmino, Salah, if they're not at it, he'd have no hesitation of bringing them out of the team. That's why they're at it every single week, because they've got their own standards. But Jurgen Klopp, you know, don't be kidded by the guy on the touchline that is smiling and laughing away and clapping and, you know, waving to the crowd. There's no doubt that Jurgen Klopp has got them players, you know, like a well-oiled machine, you know, to a system, and everybody being at it. And that's how you win. That's how you win. You know, you look at Man United, you know, in their heyday, they were 4-4-2. Beckham down the right with Neville, Giggs on the left with Eoin, two solid centre-backs, midfielders, world-class forwards. And you know, they were just so driven, and that's how you've got to be. And as I said, if the players are driven, and if you've got the right mentality as a player, the manager, you make the manager's job easy, because he knows he can trust his players, and he can trust his players to go and play and go and win and be successful. And that's why, you know, that's why they're so successful, some of these teams, because they have top players with the right mindset and with the right attitude.
John, you talk about those exact phrases that you've just used there about the right attitude, the right mentality, beating a path to the manager's door. One of the most interesting stories on the planet at the minute in terms of football is that one of the best footballers on the planet is not playing, and I don't know how happy he is, but it looks as if he's content to flit away what should be some of his prime years. Your compatriot at Real Madrid. What's happening with Gareth Bale, and how much would you like to see him show maybe a bit of a better attitude and get back out there playing?
Yeah, well, this is the big question, isn't it? You know, Gareth still comes and plays for Wales. He's still pivotal. You know, Wales are in the Euros. Obviously, with the pandemic, the Euros have been put back to 2021. He was obviously looking to play for Wales because he can get a few games under his belt. You know, I don't know what the situation is. I don't know whether it's Zidane or Gareth. To be honest, I think Gareth's fit. He's wanting to play. The manager seems to not want him to play or want to keep him on the bench. You know, Gareth Bale's won 4 Champions Leagues at Real Madrid. He's scored goals in 2 of them finals. And Gareth Bale has got 106 goals for Real Madrid. He's the greatest foreign product that's ever gone abroad in terms of his success and the goals that he has scored. And I don't know how many assists, but he's got a huge contract. He's got another year or 2 years left on his current deal. I don't know. People might ask, well, why doesn't he want to go and play football? But he's sitting on a huge deal. Is it his fault or is it the manager's fault? Because if he's fit and he's training well and it's not his fault if the manager's not picking him. If the manager prefers to play other players, or if it's... But it seems to have gone a bit personal now. I think the rumours are... I don't know. I don't speak to Gareth. We have an agent, Stellar Promotions, used to look after me, but I'm not with them guys anymore. So, as I said, I'm not too up to date on the situation. All I know is that I know how good Gareth Bale is, and I think the whole world knows how good Gareth Bale is. When he's at it, he's
it's almost, John, like you say, it's impossible to know from the outside looking in exactly whose fault this is, and it certainly seems also, as you've said, that Zidane just doesn't fancy him for whatever reason. But at the same time, when you see the stuff that he's up to when he's in the stands, like making the binocular signs and whatever else is going on, it doesn't indicate that his attitude is necessarily exactly where it needs to be.
Well, listen, I think couple of hand gestures, and when you're sitting there as a substitute and you've got the world's photos on you and every photographer in the stadium, hundreds of them, is pointing the camera at you, then listen, players will do that. At the end of the day, we don't know if he's training well and he's on time and he's offering himself up every week to play, and the manager doesn't want to play him, then there's a clear problem. I think Real Madrid would like him off their books. I think Real Madrid would like him to move on so Zidane can use the money, or he can use other players. He's not quite, he's not in Zidane's thoughts then at all. That seems to be the situation for me. But as I said, Gareth is on a huge contract, and it's his prerogative whether or not he wants to stay or whether or not he wants to move on. And people will comment. People will have their say about it. Who's come in for him? Have Manchester United come in for him? Have Spurs come in for him? Are people
Chinese club, I think, yeah.
Well, are people frightened of what they've got to pay him? I think he's on £600,000 a week. Which is ludicrous money. It's good luck to him, Gareth. He's earning great money. He loves Madrid, as his agent keeps saying. So we just have to see and sit and see how it goes. But the question, Gareth's attitude, we don't know, do we? It's easy on the outside to say, well, he's doing a binocular sign and he's doing this. We don't know. He could be working hard in training. And Zidane just don't fancy him. He just doesn't want to play him. So, as I said, I don't know. I've not really got an insight into it. I'm just like you guys. I'm just looking at it from the outside, really.
Let's move on to the Scottish Premiership, John. It's back this weekend, and we're going to hear a lot about the 10 in a row, possibly every weekend over the next few months. I don't think the first Old Firm is until October. It'll be crystallised at that point. How big a deal do you think this is going to become in the players' heads, the idea that history really is on the line this season?
Well, naturally, it will be in the players' heads because Celtic have a chance to create history. It's an unprecedented record they're going for. It's never happened before. It probably won't happen again, that a team have an opportunity to win 10 titles in a row. Both teams have done the 9. So 10 titles would be huge. It's history. And Celtic already has an incredible history. They want to try and add this to that. Celtic probably, have several players that have, been there from day one. The likes of McGregor, the likes of Scott Brown, the likes of James Forrest. So they have got players who understand, and they've been there for the previous 9 cups, leagues. So in terms of that, I would give Celtic an advantage. But Rangers will be absolutely determined to stop this. They will do everything in their power, just to stop Celtic winning the 10. And it's a big ask for Steven Gerrard. Not won a trophy yet in 2 years. 6 attempts at a trophy, not won a trophy. Signed over 30 players. So, it'll be exciting. It'll be passionate as the Scottish Celtic and Rangers always brings. It's never dull, as you know. But as I go back to saying, this is something that Celtic would want to do, and the fans are absolutely determined, obviously led by Neil Lennon, to go and achieve this. But it won't be easy, like every other league title to win. It's not easy.
How much of a success has Steven Gerrard been at Rangers so far, in your view?
He hasn't been a success, has he? He hasn't been a success because he's not won nothing. So I don't know in terms of Celtic won the title fairly comfortable. They've won the season before fairly comfortable. They've won cups, and he's obviously give the fans a little bit of impetus. He's give the supporters a little bit of belief with the money that Rangers have been able to find for him in terms of bringing in players. They found £7.5 million last season to bring in Kent from Liverpool. This year they brought in Balogun, the Nigerian international, a goalkeeper on loan from Sunderland. And they will probably find a bit more. Morelos is vital to them. Defoe has got injured. They start the season away at Aberdeen tomorrow. 12 kickoff. Celtic start against Hamilton on Sunday. But listen, if you're looking at stats and you're looking at it on paper, then he hasn't been a success. But if you're looking at the crowd thinking, well, they beat Celtic last season, and before they went away to Dubai, there was a little bit of momentum there on Rangers' side, but they never finished the job off. And ultimately, if you know anything about football, you are judged on trophies and you're judged on winning games, and you're judged on winning cups, especially up here in Scotland. You've got to win. If you don't win, then you're a failure. You've got to win. You've got to keep the press off your back, and the only way you do that is by winning.
How big is the pressure then on Steven Gerrard this season? Like I think the way you put it there probably suggests that if they allow Celtic to do the 10 in a row, the Rangers fans, not all of them anyway, will stand for that.
Well, the same for Neil Lennon and Celtic. Neil has to do this. The amount of pressure that Neil Lennon is on this year is unbelievable. In terms of what the fans, the pressure that the fans put on you up here in Scotland. You can't lose. If you lose or draw for Celtic or Rangers, it's a crisis. You've got to win. The fans are demanding. There's 260,000 stadiums, baying for your blood in terms of when you're on the pitch, because you've got to win. The demands are huge. And to think that, Steven Gerrard has come up here with a view to stopping Celtic. He hasn't quite been able to do that in the previous 2 years, and he has to find a way this year to try and stop the 10 in a row. The pressure is huge, and the start will be big, because within the first month of August, if either team fall 2 or 3, 4 or 5 points behind, then straight away there's going to be pressure. So Stephen knows what's ahead. He knows the challenge. He's very experienced. He was a great player, of course. And he will be trying his utmost, to bring in what type of player that he needs. But ultimately, lads, he's got to go and win. And you say how much of a success he's been. Well, he hasn't been a success, has he? How can you call him a success when Celtic have swept up the last 6 trophies available while Stephen's been the Rangers manager?
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting watch this weekend and thereafter. John, before we let you away, I do want to get your thoughts. Kevin Caban was on with us during the week, and he was talking about the Jordan Henderson that he was announced, obviously, as the Football Writers Player of the Year. And it's kind of divided opinion, hasn't it? Like, I think that you've Liverpool fans on one side saying that he absolutely deserves it, and then kind of everybody else after that saying that he wasn't the best footballer in the league. Kev was on saying that he thought Henderson only won it because he was English. What's your take?
Oh, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with the fact because he's English. That's a load of nonsense. Because he's English. He's won it because he's led Liverpool to a World Cup, World Trophy Cup. He's led Liverpool to a Champions League, and he's led him to the title, the Premiership title, the first time in 30 years. He's been pivotal to Liverpool. They've had other great players around him. He keeps driving them on. He skippers the team. And yes, there's De Bruyne is a better player, an all-round player. I think everybody would understand that. Technically, De Bruyne can cross, he can score. His technique is unbelievable. Joint success in terms of assists and goals and everything else. But I don't think you can begrudge Jordan Henderson winning this trophy because the season that he's had has been outstanding. You could maybe say, for sentiment, a lot of the votes and a lot of the decisions have gone his way. But listen, you cannot deny that he's a very good player. I wouldn't say he's a world-class player like De Bruyne. So I can see why there's been an argument. But the fact, whoever's gone on and said it's because he's English is talking nonsense. How can you get that guy on here to give your comments, on this show when he's saying it's because he's English? That is outrageous to say that.
Well, it's Kevin Caban, John. As you know, he's got a blue nose, so that might be the context.
Yeah, but that's outrageous. You can't say that. That is terrible. If you're looking for an headline, then there you go. That's it. He's give you one. But De Bruyne has no doubt a better technical all-round footballer than Henderson. But you can't begrudge Henderson winning, the Player of the Year because he has had an outstanding season. And you could argue there's a little bit of sentimental feeling there because of what Liverpool have done and what their achievements have been. Look at their achievements. They won the league by 25 points or something, but that is remarkable.
I suppose it depends, John, on what your criteria for picking. Like, if you're saying it's purely Footballer of the Year, I guess I'm trying to represent Kevin Caban's views here, but maybe badly. But he would say that if you're talking about a strict Footballer of the Year, as you say, he's probably not world class, and maybe there are other contenders. But it's that versus having led Liverpool to what he's done over the last number of months.
Well, listen, I've just said that. I've just said basically that he's not as good a player as De Bruyne. But you can't begrudge him winning it this year. And it's up to you, it's up to an individual, whichever way they want to look at it, whichever way they want to see it. But you can't begrudge Henderson. He's had a wonderful season, and he is a very, very good player without being a world-class player. So people's opinions will go on forever. Did Roy Keane ever win Player of the Year?
It's a good question. Did he win it once?
Well, he's not English, is he?
Yeah.
Roy's not English.
2000, I think.
For every Roy Keane, there's a Scott Parker. For every Roy Keane, there's a Scott Parker, John, I think is the... yeah, but to say that Henderson's English, come on. I like Kev, he's my mate, killer. But, hey, come on, for goodness sake. The Canadian air is probably getting to him, John. It says what's going on,
It's all that dancing.
John, we've taken enough of your time this morning. Thanks a million for taking the call and being so generous with your time.
All right, guys. Anytime.
Thanks,
all the best.
Cheers. John Hartson there on the line. Right, time for the sports pages.
OTB AM.
OTBsports.com. Lead with the article about OTB AM this morning. Still plenty to come, by the way, on this morning's show if you're just joining us. Stuart Byrne will join us to talk about the League of Ireland very shortly. I think at Millwall it can be character building. This is more analysis on Troy Parrott's loan move to Millwall. Stephen O'Donnell then was on with Nathan last night. We're just delighted to be back, says the St. Pat's boss. And Rummenigge says he is holding the door ajar for Thiago Alcantara, the Liverpool target. And John Giles last night talking about Nathan Ake. He's good, but at Manchester City, they need the best. So John Giles is not having it when it comes to Nathan Ake at the moment. Irish Examiner is where we'll start in terms of the sports pages. You got a sense people wanted to say they had helped build it so they could bring their grandkids there. It's 10 years today since a Leinster-Ulster side trounced the Munster Connacht selection in the first game at the Aviva Stadium. Brendan O'Brien is looking back at that. Difficult to see a player reporting their own county, meanwhile, says Donaghy, and Saudis lose patience and scrap Newcastle takeover. That is the Irish Examiner this morning. The Irish Sun, no. Toon tried to get the dough from Riyadh, but they said no. That is excellent, in fairness. Tab of the morning to you indeed from the Irish Sun. Stones is my boy. John Stones could be set for a reunion with David Moyes at West Ham as Manchester City begin their rebuild. And Cesc Fabregas exclusive on Arsenal versus Chelsea FA Cup final in the paper as well this morning. The Guardian. Jumped before being pushed. Saudis abandon Newcastle bid. £300 million takeover collapses over fears consortium would fail Premier League test, and claimed that new City emails cast doubt on CAS verdict. So this is Der Spiegel, who have published new leaked emails relating to Manchester City's past sponsorship with Abu Dhabi state companies, claiming to cast doubt on the Court of Arbitration for Sport judgment that overturned City's ban. In one of the emails, City Director Simon Pearce, who was also a senior executive in Abu Dhabi Government Authority, set out that he was forwarding the airline £91 million of £99 million that Etihad owed to the club for its sponsorship, with Etihad providing only £8 million. So some more revelations there coming from the German publication. The London Times leads with Newcastle as well. Stavely fury as Newcastle deal collapses. Fury, upset, a lot of emotions being shown yesterday from those involved in the Newcastle takeover bid. COVID passport plans for fans, meanwhile, says Matt Lawton. Clinical passports for fans is among a number of innovative initiatives being considered by the Premier League in a bid to get supporters back in grounds next season. And Manchester City closing in on £41 million Ake. A tough ask, reads the headline in the back of the Irish Daily Mail. Players are too terrified to tell tales, writes Kieran Donaghy. And a picture there of Curtis Camphor in action against England yesterday. And City land £41 million Ake as cherry picking begins. That is the headline on the big transfer news from yesterday. The Irish Mirror leads with Newcastle. You killed Toon deal. Stavely points finger at Prem rivals for Saudi collapse. Ake set for £40 million. City switches, Pep starts rebuild. And Donaghy says reporting a manager, not for me. The Irish Daily Star says sabotage. Stavely fury at Prem rivals as Toon takeover collapses. You've got a 12-page Galway races pullout in the middle of the paper today as well. And Conor Clifford feels an All-Ireland League could generate enough interest in the game here to see matches picked up by Sky Sports. We could go sky high, is the headline there as he changes in his car. City close to sealing Ake deal then is the headline on that story. Covered pretty much everywhere this morning. Back to one of the UK sports pages then, and the Daily Telegraph, as you can imagine, leading with the Newcastle story. Saudis hit out as Newcastle deal collapses. Premier League delays over approval blamed by Stavely. At the moment I am just heartbroken, says bid leader. The Herald. Star backs Blues. McCaffrey loss not a game changer, says Kieran Donaghy, and Saints boss is relieved, which is Stephen O'Donnell, the St Patrick's Athletic manager. After a few months, this all seems so far away and the odds that the league might not even restart. So this is all for us to savour and be thankful that we are back playing football, he says. The Racing Post on the front goes with Magic Mullins. Patrick teams up with Father Willie to land a Galway hurdle with Aramon. And the back of the Racing Post is Stop Trump. Crucible champion could face a tough battle in the opening round. Irish Times then. Koepka rediscovers his rhythm in Memphis. Frustrating day for Irish players Lowry, McIlroy and McDowell. Rodriguez, meanwhile, sets the pace as Spain dominate opening day. This is the Hero Open in Warwickshire, and the comeback is the biggest health hazard for sports stars, writes Johnny Waterson. This is with regards to Mike Tyson and the fact that people are coming back to sport a lot older than they probably should be, especially when it comes to boxing. And the back of the Irish Independent is "Nothing will derail Dublin bid for 6, says Donaghy, former Kingdom star, backs resilient All-Ireland champions to overcome McCaffrey absence." You've got a picture there of Patrick Mullins celebrating with the trophy after landing the Galway hurdle yesterday. And no let up for leading stars as they brace themselves for a return to action, writes John Fallon on the rugby. So the rugby calendar looks fairly busy, fairly stacked, and it'll be back in a couple of months. We've got 3 stories to go through this morning. Adrian, where do we want to start?
Kieran Donaghy obviously had some interesting things to say about the Jack McCaffrey absence not affecting the Dubs was one, because I think that there's a strong strain of thought right across the country, and I'm sure in your own native county home, where it's a huge chink of light, isn't it, for other teams, the fact that Jack McCaffrey isn't playing. But maybe now that the dust has settled on that decision, that we're collectively starting to think that, eaten bread is soon forgotten, and all the other teams, or Dublin specifically, will be able to regroup without this guy, and that, maybe that it's Liverpool without Stevie G, that, all the other players will raise their game. They don't have the go-to that they had before. They still have, obviously, tremendous quality elsewhere, but that Dublin can cope without him. I don't know, what do you think?
I think he's probably right. They can definitely cope without him. I think you probably need to chisel away a few more of those stars for them to actually come back to the pack. There is still a distance between them and the rest, and they didn't necessarily do too badly when he was away the last time. So
you're sure they'd want to lose 5 or 6? Is what we're saying?
I definitely think that if you take the 4, let's do the Mount Rushmore of important components of Dublin last year, you can make a case that the 4 are Stephen Cluxton, Brian Fenton, Jim Gavin and Jack McCaffrey. 2 of those are not going to be there this year. So if you wanted to look at it from that perspective, if you wanted to park the erroring for one moment, you could make that case. But then other people might say that's nonsense. Dean Rock and James McCarthy are more important to Dublin than Jack McCaffrey and Jim Gavin were, considering what they actually did, and kind of like the postmen that they are delivering every single time they stepped out in the field. You can just make an argument, is my point, that the Jim Gavin and Jack McCaffrey losses would be more keenly felt than many other components in that squad. So the idea that nothing will derail Dublin bid for 6, I think perhaps that's a bit strong. But I think if you're arguing the possible idea that Jack McCaffrey's absence suddenly means that this is all up in the air again and we have a free-for-all for an All-Ireland, I just don't think that's true. So I do
think that eaten bread is soon forgotten. That I think if after the All-Ireland last year that you were to sit down and say, right, let's, like you're saying, let's pluck out a couple of the key people here. You've just named 4 of them. You take out 2 of those. At that point, you'd be like, oh, Jesus, we've got a real chance here. But obviously, you're starting to rationalise things now and be trying to rationalise them in a way that isn't making a great case for Kerry, I suppose, in your own individual case there on. That's the thoughts of Kieran in relation to Jack McCaffrey. And then he's also talking about, obviously, this hotline, the GPA confidential hotline, where, you get to ring up. Do you have to put on an accent when you ring up? I'm not sure exactly how this whole thing works, but you're supposed to ring up and tell the GPA that your manager is putting on a session that he shouldn't be putting on, he or she shouldn't be putting on. I don't know that it works anywhere. I don't know when you ring the hotline, if we're dealing with sort of, the Father Ted priest hotline, or exactly sort of what the dynamic of this thing is, or how it all unfolds, or what the process is afterwards. It seems like a very unusual step that obviously from an optics point of view looks really good. It says that, we're taking this thing seriously, and if players do want to come forward and tell us that their team is doing something they shouldn't, we're all ears. I just maybe a little bit like Kieran, in practical terms, I just can't see how it would happen.
Apparently the NBA hotline was ringing off the hook, essentially.
Is that right?
Over the last few weeks, people stepping outside the bubble. But this is a very different situation, isn't it? That is your own health being impacted by people who potentially step outside the bubble or who compromise the bubble, whereas this is compromising rules that won't have as big an impact on your health as possibly contracting coronavirus would. So it's probably different, and also it's a different culture. It's a very Irish thing to not tell on your coach if they're kind of misbehaving or breaking the rules in any way. And then there's also a siege mentality within every panel as well.
The point that Kieran was making was that if there's some chance I'm going to get found out, like imagine a club or a county player at their local team shopping them in and getting and it's somehow finding its way, like in a quiet moment you tell a mate in a pub who tells a mate that they don't think will tell a mate, and suddenly it's in a WhatsApp group, and before you know it, the whole club and the whole county know that you're the one that shopped them in. Like, it's like cheating in golf. That's your you never come back from that.
No.
I mean, unless you're Colin Montgomery and some of the other ones that had just shoe sizes a little bit too big for them, that were, kicking the ball out of the rough when it shouldn't have been. So, I mean, I might just end the analogy there, but it's a tricky one in GAA particularly, I think.
Will we talk a little bit more about the Newcastle takeover and the failed Newcastle takeover bid? Because, as you got a sense of the back pages there, it is everywhere this morning. Has your fury against the Newcastle fans cooled in the last hour?
I'm not sure I'm furious with them. Like, I suppose I'm understanding of it. As a sports fan of teams myself, I understand the idea of being put upon. It's like the whole point of going to a game where your team are involved and you lose, and what percentage of sports of fans of the teams who lose leave the stadium or leave their TV at the minute going, listen, beaten by the better team. You want to be walloped before you hear fans saying that. Normally it's, the ref did us over, the manager isn't good enough, we don't have the players, etc., etc., etc. So being put upon is a kind of a rite of passage for sports fans generally. So look, I get that. I'm not sure I'm furious with them. This one is slightly different in that we're dealing with a regime, as we said earlier, where, if it's a dictatorship and if you're gay for that crime, in inverted commas, the punishment can be death. So, like, I would question where the line is, I suppose, the thing.
It's very easy to kind of separate that from the reality, though. And Newcastle fans will say, what's the big difference between that potential regime coming in and ruling our club and what's happening at Manchester City, for example?
I understand the point, but I don't ever really accept that because it's shit over there, that it's got to be shit here. I think that...
but their point might be that it's not actually over there. It's all here. It's England. It's the Premier League. We're all in the one division.
I'm saying in relation to Man City that just because another club are doing it doesn't mean that you have to accept that it happens at your club too. Like, I mean, I don't think that's a rationale that stacks up. But, like, I understand that's... it's the big theme that's come out of this is, like, the heartbreak of the Newcastle fans that this takeover hasn't gone through. And I just wonder if it's, the best thing that might happen. There's already discussions about, I just saw very scant murmurings of it this morning, that there's yet another takeover bid possibly in the pipelines. There's probably no better time to come in and offer a sum of money to take over the club than there is at the minute, because they're obviously on their belly from a fan's point of view, and they're thirst to have somebody other than Mike Ashley take over. And he's obviously seen the 300 million quid slip through his fingers. There's also a load of different rationale depending on what reports you read as to exactly why all this has happened. Was it to do with it wasn't, we believe, from the Premier League's point of view, to do with the human rights abuse. It was more to do with the broadcast rights piracy. Yeah. Which in itself, as you say those words, seems fairly bizarre. It was more to do with that. So was it that, or was it that Mike Ashley changed the price at the last minute, or was it a mismanagement of the deal? Like, nobody really knows. I don't buy this thing was taken. We were going to spend 300 million quid. One of the things that's come out was that that Amanda Staveley and the Saudis were saying they were going to spend the 300 million quid, but it was taking too long, and that they couldn't wait another couple of weeks to spend the 300 million quid. I don't buy that for a second, I have to say. I think that maybe the wind of change was just against them. They knew what was coming down the track. They got out before they were pushed out. I don't know, but there's probably no better time to be going in at Newcastle. I think the common thing would be that, like, they are such a massive club. I've been up there. The whole town it's all the cliches you hear about Newcastle and how involved in the success of the football team the entire city is absolutely true. And the stadium sort of sits up a little bit above the city, looking down. It's got that fairly symbiotic relationship, and I think, as a football fan, you'd love to see somebody come in there who was doing the right thing by the club, but I don't know how close they are to that.
Yeah, I wonder where Be Out Q and what games they don't illegally stream for free. Is it just Premier League? I mean, maybe they don't do it for La Liga, and therefore they might actually turn their attention towards Spain. Like your point about this being a good time to take over Newcastle, I'm not sure if I fully go along with that. Like the idea that there was going to be guaranteed success when you take over at Newcastle only existed because they have so much money and they're a nation state taking over a Premier League football club. If you're a billionaire coming in to take over, you're not going to have the wealth that Saudi Arabia had. You're not going to have the wealth to outspend a lot of the big six, or potentially you think you will, but after a couple of seasons, the well might run dry a little bit and the owner might actually be reluctant to spend a bit more money. Whereas with the nation...
Do you know, sorry, I want to go across you. I think that I think that you're right, and I think that the old reasons why it was good to buy a club like Newcastle don't exist to the same degree anymore. Like, they've got a huge local fan base, and you can sell loads of tickets, and you can sell loads of merchandise. Like, that's pennies now, right? Compared to the wealth that a regime like that will be able to bring in, and they don't have the global fan base that you could tap into in a way that United, City to a lesser degree, and some of the other bigger Liverpool, some of the other bigger clubs would have.
Very quickly, before we wrap up, Adrian, you've been looking at the rugby stories this morning. Jerry Thornley, for example, writing in the Irish Times, cramming exercise will put all concerned to the test. We're getting a greater idea of how the rugby calendar at the end of 2020 is going to look.
Two brief points on this. One of them being that I think they were talking about the rugby championship and wound up over a short period of time only in New Zealand. Actually struck me as something that would be a phenomenal idea going forward, that you would just convene all teams in a Rugby World Cup type state, all teams in one country for a shorter period of time. It cuts down on air miles, it cuts down on the longevity of the tournament. That doesn't necessarily have to be at the expense of all the commercial. I think you can maintain all of that. Definitely a format worth looking at. And the other thing is that, like all the rest and recuperation that players' bodies have been able to get into over the last sort of 5 months to maybe re-energise themselves, like, are we, given the squeezed nature of the calendar between is it the end of August and the end of the year, given that we're going to run off the Six Nations, a couple of games for Ireland to play there, we're going to have this new Six Nations +2 tournament, we're going to have the Champions Cup, there's going to be a lot of stuff squeezed into a short period of time. Is all that good or going to be undone? It's quite possible, I would think.
Yeah. Another story this morning as well that we should mention is inside the Irish Sun, an exclusive by Jason Byrne, that Monaghan star Jack McCarron looks set to miss the rest of the GAA year. He's damaged cruciate ligaments in club championship at the weekend. Obviously a huge loss for Seamus McInerney's side. He hasn't had a lot of luck with his injuries over the past few years. That is the sports pages for you this morning. Let's have a look at the OTB Sports app before we wrap up. This is your homepage, the feed with all the stories, as we've been mentioning this morning. You've got your latest videos and your latest podcasts there. You will be getting our podcasts first on the OTB Sports app, not least the OTB AM podcast, which is up from 10 o'clock every morning. The app, by the way, if you haven't got it yet, is available in the Google Play Store or in the App Store. You've got the live radio tab there as well, where you can listen to us live and any live content from OTB Sports Radio throughout the day, and then the podcasts there again in its own tab. So that is the OTB Sports app available now. OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning start at Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. It is 8 minutes past 9 on this Friday morning, and plenty to come this hour. Deal or No Deal and Stuart Byrne on the return of the League of Ireland, and we'll be back straight after the break with a special report on Kenyan athletics. Jake O'Donnell travels to Eoin, Kenya for OTB Sports and the Simon Cumbers Media Fund. That's up next.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Looking for a football show with a bit of a twist?
So I know the likes of Griezmann's big into his fashion.
You wanted a lot. One question he actually asked me was, could he make his studs light up when he runs?
Team 33, the football magazine show for the football purists.
Yeah, the Nike Mercurials from 1998. If you just show that boot to an entire generation of people, and they just get instantly nostalgic and remember everything from that era.
The very best interviews with the cult heroes of the past, and a look at the cultural side of football. Team 33, live at 9 p.m. every Friday on OTB Sports Radio. Live 24/7 on the OTB Sports app.
Missing this?
I remember Ollie texted me Solskjaer. One or two people would get hold of my number, unfortunately, and he would text me.
Then get this, the all-new OTB Sports app. Off the Ball, Ireland's premier sports channel, now has a new home, featuring the biggest names in Irish and world sports. Podcasts, interviews, news, commentary, analysis, plus almost 20 years of sporting archives. All free and ready when you are, at home or on the go. The new OTB Sports app. Download it now from the App Store and Google Play.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
According to the World Bank, 35% of people here live below the international poverty line. That's living on less than €1.70 a day. As a result, even a modest athletics career can change the life of a whole family or village here. The story of Lydia Cherame is typical of many female athletes. Running barefoot was just what she did to arrive at school on time and to avoid the teacher's cane. However, athletic ability soon transformed her rural village life for the better.
If you could run good, you could get sponsorship and you could go to school without parents struggling. So, and then after going to school, you can get job or you can get opportunity to go outside. So you cannot become just like housewife.
Yes. As the country's athletics success has continued, athletes' mansions have begun to spring up around Eldoret and on the outskirts of E10. At the same time, reinvesting and giving back to the community remains fundamental to many of the country's iconic athletes.
There is a belief among many Kenyans that you must give back to your community. Some of them who do well financially will build schools, will build dispensaries and clinics, will build, set up dams or agricultural projects in their home area. That's kind of an inbuilt requirement, so to speak, and they feel very strong about it.
Brothers to Lydia, Joseph and Mike Cherame were some of the first athletes to set up a school for their community. Starting out with just 3 students, today the school's attendance is well over 600.
We were almost the first athletes to open a school in 1993, when most of them had not thought. But our objective was not to use the money we had. It was to help the community. And to date, still the same thing we are doing.
A key aim of the school today, Joseph says, is to counteract the threat of hyenas, older men who groom young female athletes into marriage, only to financially exploit them.
With an educated athlete, female educated athlete, it's not easy to prey on these people. So people take advantage of those who are young. If you see those who are being preyed now, primary school dropouts.
Really?
But with high school, not easy to take advantage of these educated athletes.
Okay.
Not easy.
It's a view shared by another fellow Olympian, Janet Chepkoske, who's patron to a school in her name in Capson-Bayo.
I would like the next generation to be more educated. When someone is learned, I don't think the life will be easier. You can manage your own money, actually. So most of the challenges which women faces is when they have the wrong partners. And women, you see men, they want those people who have money now.
Founded just 9 years ago, the school has already doubled its number of students, and Jepkoski says she is ambitious of more growth.
And we still need more students. There was a time we had to stop the enrollment because we were getting more students than even the teachers. So I had to talk to the government, to educational side, and they gave me more teachers.
With the development and expansion of schools like this, the advancements in education are not hard to see.
I have watched many athletes run recently, and I've seen them being interviewed in various media houses. They talk good English, and that is the moment I see they are learned people, and that is my happiness. Okay. They are very learned. Some of them have gone to university, and I think that is the happiness we have now. It is now fading a little bit. It is fading. The new generation is changing, and it is because of education.
Jake O'Donnell for OTB Sports in Capson-Bayo.
You wish them success.
Yeah, really good pieces there by Jake O'Donnell in Kenya for the Simon Cumbers Media Fund. You can check out part 1 as well. It's available now on our YouTube channel. Right, we are turning our attention to the League of Ireland. It is back. Stuart Byrne is with us. How are you, Stuart?
Hey, Eoin, how are you? How you doing?
Not too bad, thanks. So, a lot of debate around the format of how we're going to proceed with the season over the next little while, about how to get the game even back up and running. Obviously, Ireland was lagging behind. Do you see any of those issues rearing its head again, or have things been sorted out and everybody is just happy to get back on the pitch tonight?
I'd say everyone's just happy to get back on the pitch. Without a doubt, definitely without a doubt. Whether or not we've sort of ironed out all the issues, I'm not so sure. We're obviously going through sort of something that we've never gone through before. It's a global pandemic. There's such a fractured diversity within the football clubs here that it's very difficult to get a common goal or one or two kind of common ways forward. So I think they're the kind of issues that we will have to redress once the season is over. But I think the fact that we're going into what is a shortened season, games are going to be coming thick and fast when you look at the schedule. There's a game on nearly every day with the exception of Wednesday and Thursday. So I think that's going to be enough to kind of keep the focus on the pitch for the moment. But I think there's a lot of work to be done off the pitch.
Yeah, we might get into that in just a moment. But as you say, the games being streamed, the games being available, the games being very frequent, that presents a great opportunity.
Oh, well, it does. And it's probably a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for us, Owen, because I would have been very much in favour of something like this. A long time ago, I felt that the technology was always available. Unfortunately, there just didn't seem to be a will at a particular level to do it. But it's happened now by default, and I think it's a wonderful thing. It's a great opportunity for the game here to be showcased globally, because it can be accessed globally. And when you look at some of the games that we've been looking at behind closed doors, I think it's probably highlighted that. It's amazing what a brand can do for a game, or what the crowd noise can do for a game, or what the atmosphere can do. So we're kind of very much on a level playing field now. That people have been looking at games in Germany, they've been looking at games in England, all across Europe, and it's just been the football, and then we're now being sort of brought up to the same level. So it's an opportunity for people to kind of look at the games, see what the quality is really like, which I believe is there. So hopefully we get to see some really, really good quality games.
Sorry, go on, Adrian.
Yeah, Stuey, how are you getting on? Good morning. The streaming thing, obviously, I know you're involved in the production of it, so you're going to tell us it's going to be amazing, and we get that. Looking at some of the comments that have come from RTE and other sources over the last couple of weeks about the appetite or the numbers that are actually going to come and pay for the service, it seems to be that there's some questioning of that, like whether there's a short window now to make a success of this. They won't tell us what numbers actually would represent success. What's your sense of whether there's enough of an appetite from League of Ireland fans here and abroad to make this thing work?
Well, I can only go on, Adrian, what I've sort of felt myself in. I'd say in the last couple of years, and just in conversations I would have had with people, either within football or actually outside of football in my job, for example. So in my, I work in an office for 400. There's 300-400 people. And everyone's a football fan, and everyone's a big fan of the obviously the English Premier League and so on and so forth. But you've got a lot of guys in there and gals who support the game here and want to support the game here, actually, which is probably more significant than anything. They want to support the game here. However, the problem is, the age-old problem is that we've often shot ourselves in the foot when it comes to the promotion of the game here. The off-the-field bickering never helps, and some of the grounds aren't at a good enough standard. The facilities for families, these are all the list is there. We all know them. There's no point in sort of saying they don't exist. They do. But I do feel that there's a hunger there for people to kind of want to get involved. They want to go down to their local League of Ireland club or whatever the case may be. Sometimes some counties don't have a League of Ireland team within their within their county, but there's always one close by. I think there's a hunger to get involved, but something needs to be, they need to be pulled in, Adrian. You know, there needs to be more promotion around that. We need to try and identify what that market is, who these people are. I made a comment there during the week about, which is something I do every few years, but I'm gonna start pressing the button on it now. I feel that I'm trying to make people aware now of their affiliation with the Premier League and the club they might support in the Premier League, and why is that? You know, I'm trying to kind of maybe question people as to why, or at least make an awareness to why is it you support an English Premier League? Why are we so obsessed with the English Premier League? And you know, I would say in most cases there are very, very legitimate reasons as to why we are obsessed with the English Premier League. But I'd say there are a small percentage of people, and I would hope a bigger percentage of people, that maybe aren't too sure why they have an affiliation with a football club in England. And maybe they're the kind of people we can convince to come back here and say, well, look, you know, because we're having this pure reflective period at the moment. After what's happened through COVID, we're being asked to staycation, we're being asked to buy Irish, we're being asked to support the local economy. You know, as Irish people, we're trying to survive this crisis together. So why should football be any different? You know, why don't we ask people, well, can you come to it? Can you get involved in your League of Ireland, your local League of Ireland club? Can you support them there? So it's just an awareness thing.
Stuey,
and I just think it's a conversation worth having.
Sorry to cut across you. Sometimes that message can come across from League of Ireland fans as we don't want you supporting an English team. Why aren't you supporting an Irish team? As a very kind of...
That's what I got straight away when I said it.
Yeah, and like I don't ever understand why those things.
Adrian, you can't help how people interpret what you're trying to say. See,
isn't the point that fans can go ahead. Like the reason that people support the English Premier League is that it's on our doorstep, and not as close as the League of Ireland, but it's on our doorstep, and arguably the best league in the planet. Right, the quality of football is unbelievable. The best and brightest Irish players will go and play there, and so people keep an eye on it for that reason. But I don't understand why that can't coexist. Why one needs to cannibalise the other?
Of course it can. It can coexist. There's no. I'm not trying to. I'm genuinely not trying to spark an us against them conversation. Really, I'm not. I just feel that you know, there's so much money goes from here to the game over there. You know, when you look at the cost of jerseys, the cost of travel, the cost of tickets, all this kind of thing. Who I'm trying to appeal to is more so, Aidan, I'm trying to appeal to the person who's not really, you know, who maybe, you know, isn't really fully sure about why it is they've supported a club in England. I've gone through this myself, Adrian. I went through this 20 years ago. And it coincided with maybe me signing for Shelbourne, and I was historically a Manchester United fan, you know, and I remember going to a Manchester United game when I was a kid, and it was amazing, the most amazing thing I've ever experienced in my life, because I didn't know any different. Then I went back the odd time subsequent years, a little bit older, a little bit wiser, and I just felt, you know, it was, you know, I don't know why I'm doing this. It's very expensive. It's a lot. It's a long way to travel. The game wasn't that good. I think there's, you know, there was all these kind of questions that I asked myself, and it coincided with me signing full time for Shelbourne. I really bought into what we were trying to do at Shells. We were trying to sort of crack that European nut, and that was it. That's it. It's just an awareness I'm trying to put out there to people. That's it. I'm not genuinely not trying to segregate us, the League of Ireland, from the Premier League, or to put a big wall down the middle here. I really am, because when you think about it, I mean, you know, there's this conflict between Ireland and England for all obvious sorts of political reasons. But the one thing that's been a bond between the two has been football. That's the one thing that's been a huge bond has kept probably conversations going between the two, and has kept friendships, and that. So I would never attempt to try and remove that. It's just I'm trying to kind of appeal to that 5% of people that maybe would huge football lovers want to get involved in the game, maybe, and maybe there's a better option for them here.
It's interesting that the people who have kind of got on board in recent times when it comes to League of Ireland clubs, there's just so many small things that do work for the league, even the idea of Friday night kickoffs and the social aspect that provides for a lot of people. I know that's been taken away now at this point, but is there an acceptance that perhaps that is a great avenue with which the League of Ireland can go down? The Friday night football, it doesn't clash generally with any Premier League games, and for anybody in urban areas, there tends to be a League of Ireland game on their doorstep on a Friday night, and it's kind of like a great centrepiece of a social evening. That seems to be something that is working, even though it can be explored even further down the line, hopefully when we get back to people in stadiums.
Yeah, that has something, I think, that has it's helped put a clearer identification on the league, if for want of a better phrase. People knew that League of Ireland games were on a Friday, and I think that helps. I think that helps people plan their week, plan their month, and they can plan around, different things like that. So that's helped. That's something that did come in a good few years ago, and I think primarily that was the reason. It was so that it was not conflicting with any other major sporting events going on around Europe, and I think it certainly helped. Unfortunately, now we are starting to see games coming on a Friday, but I think people do. They look at Friday as being a League of Ireland thing, but it is only a start, I just say, and I think it's something that we need to build on. I think it's because there's a huge infrastructural deficit within the football clubs. There's a lot of investment that needs to go in to kind of get us to a certain level, even to kind of get us on a level, even maybe the GAA. So that's a big problem, and that's not going to fix itself overnight. That's going to come over time with investment and resources and things like that. But what we can do now, I think some football clubs have done a brilliant job at it. I'm only looking at maybe the likes of Bohemians and my own club, Shells. Bows, I think, have done a great job at sort of tapping into their local community. They've sort of created an identity around the football club, which has worked brilliantly, and you only have to go to a game at Dalymount when there's a crowd, obviously, and see how, see the rewards that they're getting back for that. However, and this is the however, I don't think that can last forever. It has to evolve all the time, because there is such a deficit. There is such a deficit with stadia here, with resources, with facilities, that's not going to last forever, and we will have to evolve quickly. But I think we have the minds and the will and the people to get involved. And just going back to what I was trying to suggest there, with people maybe wanting to get involved with a club here, if you are, if Bohemians is your local football club, you can nearly get involved immediately. They're crying out for people to help. Whereas maybe that wouldn't be the case with some of the bigger football clubs in England. There's no open avenue to get involved, so to speak.
That's true. The kind of the Premier League is obviously in danger of consuming itself, and we see pictures of Saudi Arabia pulling out of Newcastle overnight and stuff. If the League of Ireland are going to create a point of difference, one of them is definitely more of a community-based thing. I'm just keen on this specific topic of actually promoting the game here. The All-Ireland League then surely can't hurt. It is topical at the moment. We had the 10 clubs in the League of Ireland Premier Division who'd written to the FAI last week to express engagement with a desire to engage with UEFA over this. There is big enough interest as well from the Irish League. Perhaps the IFA aren't fully on board. But do you see any drawbacks for the promotion of the League of Ireland were it to be transformed into some version of an All-Ireland League?
I don't see any drawbacks. No, I'm a huge advocate of an All-Ireland League. I would think it'd be wonderful. And just I had a taste of it as a player with the Setanta Cup, especially in the first 3 or 4 years of the Setanta Cup, because it was a big competition. People probably don't remember what the Setanta Cup was like, but it was big. It was as big as it was bigger than the FAI Cup probably. There was more prize money at stake, and you were playing against the biggest clubs from the south were pitting themselves against the biggest clubs from the north. So I got a real taste of it. I thought this was the way forward. This was the way forward, without a doubt. However, my eyes have been drawn, especially in recent years, to the political, sort of wall that's there at the moment, which is definitely improving, and I think that's going to be the one thing that will draw this process out. There's no doubt I feel that ultimately there will be an All-Ireland League, and hopefully it happens sooner rather than later. But putting a time frame on it is very, very difficult to do. Very, very difficult to do. So by all means, I think the clubs here and the clubs in the north putting in a submission to UEFA is the correct way to do it. I think they need to open the lines of conversation, get the conversation going, and try and path a way forward. But in the meantime, I do think clubs here need to get their own house in order before they even sort of start to think of an All-Ireland League. Because if the clubs here aren't on a level playing field or aren't on a level footing, and the infrastructure is not right, and they don't have their house in order, those issues and those problems are just going to carry themselves into an All-Ireland League, and it'll probably be exacerbated by that if it goes into a bigger league. So that's the only caution I would have there.
Yeah, that if you join up, and the same goes for the Irish League as well. Anything that they might have, it just like the question is though, how much time do you give yourself to sort out those issues before you actually get into this marriage? Like that is the question. Like there probably won't be a time period in the near future where the League of Ireland will have sorted out all of its problems. Well, it kind of seems that the All-Ireland League is being seen as a solution to some of the problems, whereas perhaps that's not actually the case at all.
Yeah, well, that would worry me as well. That that clubs here look at an All-Ireland League as being a solution to their problems. It just won't work on. I mean, and again, it's very each club is run very much differently, and that became very evident in the negotiations during the COVID-19 period to try and put a financial package together and to get the league back up and running. It was so fractured, and the issues were so diverse across all the clubs that it was, it became a huge pain point and a blocker towards moving forward. So the clubs really do have to kind of, I suppose, try and sort of get their own house in order here first. There's a big emphasis on this, there's a big responsibility on football clubs to get their own, infrastructure in place, their own finances in place, their own what model works for them, what financial model works for them going forward. So, can they be a semi-professional football club? Can they be a fully professional football club, or can they mix both? Can they mix maybe football with education, or there's a lot of conversations and a lot of things that clubs need to kind of maybe get their head around before thinking they can go off to an All-Ireland League and that will just solve all the problems, because it won't.
Let's talk about the football. Tonight you're covering Dundalk. I think it's very interesting how things have now changed, where teams at the start of the calendar year were limbering up for a season that looked very, very different to this. They've had an incredibly long layoff. We're going to see a number of new faces, I'd imagine, come to the fore. This is what happens at the start of every season, not least a season that's had this long of a layoff. Do you see form returning? Do you see Rovers and Dundalk going straight back to the top here, or are we going to see a bolter as the season develops?
Yeah, well, it's funny to say that. There does always seem to be someone that comes out of the pack at the start of the season and really sort of rises above, the expectation level of everybody, including themselves. But I don't know whether I see that happening now, because it's such a shortened season. Yeah. And when you look at the table now, you've got Rovers and Dundalk both in the driving seat. They're both in pole position to kind of kick on. I'm very, very much fascinated by the psychology of it all, and I kind of would have mentioned this to you. I just, as a player, we are so tuned into an 8-month season. Your body clock works a certain way at certain times during the season. You tend to change your diet even as the season would go on. As you get more fatigued, you'd probably sort of make little alterations to your diet. Psychology wise, if you're lucky enough to be playing in a club that's always going for league titles, or always playing in Europe, there's a huge psychology around coping with those periods of the year where you're playing in Europe, you're traveling away, you're dealing with, you're playing in temperatures of 30 degrees heat, you're staying in hotels, there's all that kind of stuff. So all that now is just it's just been clamped into one very, very shortened few weeks. A lot of people won't know how their body is going to perform in that period, and you're going to get the likes of injuries and suspensions and stuff like that. So the only way I look at this is that I look at the likes of Shamrock Rovers, Dundalk. They're very much very professional outfits. They're they're sort of tuned into sort of trying to win league titles, regardless of whether there's big crowds at games or not. They have to go out and perform week in, week out, and regardless of whether they're playing against the lesser teams or the bigger teams, they always have to perform, because the lesser teams will always raise their game when they're playing against them. So they're at that sort of level mentally when they perform. That's why I think I can't see past the two of them. I can't see past Shamrock Rovers or Dundalk. I think they're going to kick on. I don't know, when you look at the pack in behind, I think Bohemians have had a fantastic few years. I think they're how they've acquired players. I think the job that Keith Long has done there has been incredible. And I think they're probably in best place to kind of maybe follow in suit. But hopefully what we see is very, very good quality football, because we're not going to be seeing games with crowds. We're going to be seeing the raw game, which people aren't used to seeing. They've gotten a little taste, as I said before, by looking at some of the games that have been shown on television. And so hopefully the quality is good on the pitch, which I think it will be. I think it will be, especially with some of the top teams.
It's interesting that you mentioned the psychology of this sprint-style season. It's as much to do with the physiology as anything else, isn't it? Is this going to just increase the gap between the professional and the semi-professional / non-professional teams at this point? The greater resources means the greater ability to manage what is going to happen over the next little while.
Yeah, really good points. Yeah. The obviously the ability to recover is going to be, I think, key for a player. I'm thinking in a player's sense here, the ability to recover and to to be able to kind of go from Saturday to Tuesday to Friday to Monday. So there's going to be shortened periods there to recover. Some clubs are going to have to go and play in European football, and then of course there's also, and it's a factor, but there's the staggered times as well that these games are going to be played at. A lot of footballers, a lot of players here have never played a game at 2 o'clock in their life. So that plays into your preparation. That immediately, that's what I'd be thinking of. I'm looking at the likes of Shells. They're playing at 2 o'clock on Saturday, and then I think they're away on the Tuesday. So a 2 o'clock game, it's a different preparation for a player. So it's you're up at a certain time. You're having you may not have the normal food intake you would if you were playing at 7:45. So it's just fascinating. It really is, and it because it's such a you're so used to saying that a league season is a marathon. It's not a sprint, and then all of a sudden you just have to turn that on its head and say no, it's a sprint. So I think we're going to see within the first couple of weeks we're going to see a definitive shape on the table, and then of course those that are down the bottom, it's a real scrap for survival.
It's not going to sit well with them, you'd imagine, the teams that do get relegated. That was the big sticking point regarding the negotiations.
Yeah, I don't really want to think about that at the moment, because it's very hard to see anybody getting relegated being happy with it, and I suppose it does open to it's probably open to an appeal because they changed the rules mid-season, but unfortunately I think that's one of them things that that's one of them bridges we're just going to have to cross when we come to it, because we just have to get the game back up and running here. We have to get people back looking at football. We have to get players back playing football, and we use that time between now and the end of the season to try and put some sort of a shape or a roadmap on where we want the kind of league to go, even for next season.
So what's going to decide the title race then, Stuey, before we leave you go, and what is your prediction?
Well, I'd imagine the likes of Dundalk and Rovers are looking at that game, that single game that they have left to play each other.
25th of September.
Yeah. So obviously live on TV, all the stuff going behind it. So it's even though it's not right at the end of the season, there's probably a 5 or 6 week period to kind of recover from any kind of loss of points. But I'd say that's the real you know, I can only see Shamrock Rovers and Dundalk, you know, leading the charge here, staying very, very close together until that game. I think that game might be the real decider, you know. So can't see beyond the two of them.
Well, enjoy tonight, Stuey. It's good to be back. Thanks, Minnie, for taking the call.
Thanks, Stuey.
Thanks, Adrian. Take care.
Last night on OTB, sticking with this theme, Nathan was joined by St Pat's manager Stephen O'Donnell, and here he is on the return of the League of Ireland.
Is it a fair and proper way to see out the season in such a rushed fashion?
Look, ideally you would say no, but as you said, we're just delighted to be back. But ideally you'd say an 18-game season, you know, half of what the original sort of calendar was meant to be, you would say no. But look, these aren't normal times, and at the minute my mindset is take what you're given. We're just happy to be back. We're getting some remnants of a league, and we're just delighted to be part of it. But you know, any other year, if someone was put forward to you at the beginning of the season saying the league's going to be an 18-game season, you'd probably say, you know, that's very much on the short side, and you wouldn't be totally satisfied with it. But as I said, you take what you're given now in the times we're living in at the moment. So I'm just mainly focused on the positive, and that we're back out in the training pitch, and we're back the players are back playing the game they love, and we're back coaching and helping the individuals in the game we love. So that's the way I like to focus on it.
I'm sure you were kept busy during the lockdown with a young daughter and all that. But in terms of your footballing work, were you able to spend much time thinking about what type of coach, what type of manager you're going to be? Because you know, you probably never really had any period out of the game at all, from being a player, going straight in with Dundalk in a backroom role, and then getting the St Pat's job almost a year ago at this stage. You probably haven't really had time to think about what sort of coach you're going to be. What did you do during that break?
Yeah, exactly. I think you hit the nail on the head. I managed to take stock. We were 4 games into the season. Managed to sort of take a step back, look at everything, whereas you wouldn't be able to afford to do that if the season was continuing to just be hit with games and training sessions and preparing for the next game. So obviously the extended break, you could take stock, have a look back, what you could have improved on maybe in pre-season, what you could have improved on you know, in the first 4 games, and then devise a plan going forward. So from that point of view, I do definitely think sort of it's probably improved me as a coach and a manager. As you said, you can little sort of bits, you know, yourself, you can improve on. Look, ultimately, I'm at the start of hopefully what's a long coaching and managerial journey. So I have a lot to learn. I'm still very much a novice, but it did give me that opportunity to take stock of the first few games of the pre-season just gone. And, you know, definitely areas that we can improve on as a coach and staff. And, you know, lots of things that probably we can implement and share with the players.
Yeah, Stephen O'Donnell on last night's Off the Ball. OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Now, we mentioned this story a little bit earlier on this morning. There was some big Irish news over in the AFL, because it has been announced that Cork youngster Mark Keane is on course to make his debut, is set to make his debut, in fact, with Collingwood this weekend. The club have just posted this video, which is Mark ringing home to tell them the news.
Are you working today?
Yeah, I'm working. I'm just going to get ready there now.
Are you working Sunday?
No.
No, because I'm making my debut on Sunday. Yeah, playing my first game on Sunday.
Oh my God!
Yeah, so.
Oh my God!
I'm looking forward to that now.
Oh my God, I'm so delighted. I'm going to cry.
Don't cry. Relax a little.
Are you delighted?
Yeah.
When did I tell you?
They was just there this morning with a team meeting this morning, so.
Oh my God. Oh Jesus, Mark. Where can we watch it?
I know you have to watch it on 9 or something. It's on at 9 o'clock in the morning, so it's actually a good time. Not too bad.
At 9 o'clock?
Yeah, 9 o'clock Sunday morning.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh, and I was getting on to Dad to hook me up
Yeah.
and something to watch it.
I tried ringing there, there was no answer. He just tried to ring me back, but I'm just giving him a ring.
He doesn't know yet, does he?
No, I'm just giving him a ring there now.
Oh my God. And bring your brother as well, will ya?
Yeah, alright, so.
Oh my God. Oh, but hard work paid off.
Yeah, no, that's it. It's good.
All paid off for you, Mark. I'm so delighted for you.
Thanks, man. I'll give Dad a ring and I'll talk to you later on. Talk to you.
That's class. My favourite thing about that, Adrian, is the fact that clearly the video team had set up for him to ring his dad, which would nearly have been anywhere near as entertaining as ringing an Irish mammy to actually tell her the news.
You can't beat mammies. That was class, wasn't it? Like, just a little sort of natural. Fair play to her, she didn't use any expletives. I also wondered if for an Australian audience, if that's definitely going to have to be subtitled, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. Also, there's been an explainer published on the AFL website. I'm not sure if you saw Conor McKenna's solo last week, which did the rounds on Twitter, but naturally kind of went viral in certainly this part of the world, and I think there was a bit of curiosity down there about what is a solo and all that. It is within the rules, they say, a mini kick as they call it. He's not playing this weekend, and Catherine Murphy says perhaps Zach Tuohy can show us the Laois version. You can leave it up to Collingwood FC's Mark Keane on his debut. The question has been asked all week whether the mini kick counted as a bounce and whether or not that debate sometimes comes up. For the record, it doesn't. League rules state that players must bounce or touch the ball on the ground once every 15 metres, irrespective of whether they are running in a straight line or otherwise. And the piece continues, for the purposes of this law, a player shall be deemed to be in possession of the football during the period when the player handballs the football to themselves and regains possession without the football touching the ground. So I appreciate we're getting into the technicalities of AFL at 9:45 on a Friday morning. But well done, Conor McKenna, on hacking the system.
I mean, it's been around in GA for years, hasn't it? Like 4 steps, neither hop or take a mini kick.
A very scientific rule as well, the 4 steps. That's never been abused whatsoever, and the referees always get it spot on. Right, time for Deal or No Deal.
I signed for them after the Euros, and after my first day's training, I was driving home. I was actually thinking, regretting it, what have I done? Like I walked into a circus. It's amazing, isn't it?
Right, all right. The Deal or No Deal for this Friday morning, as Eoin said, just got a 10:15, and we're going to put on through his paces now and find out how legitimate he thinks some of these deals actually are. First of all, in the last 24 hours thereabouts, on a rapid acceleration in Manchester United's interest in Raúl Jiménez from Wolves. He's now expected to actually move to Old Trafford. Apparently, as agreed to 27, Paulinho, I should say, has agreed to £27 million deal to join Wolves. That'll pave the way for Jimenez to leave. And staying in Manchester a couple of days ago, Daniel Harris, of course, friend of the show, tweeted to say that he understands that Jadon Sancho to Manchester United is close. This is one that's been on and off over the last number of months. Club have agreed €60 million up front, 60 million in instalments after that. And all's been negotiated. It does, of course, Eoin, obviously leave the question of what Manchester United are going to do with all these forward players. So Martial, Rashford, Greenwood, Sancho and Jimenez. What gives?
It's interesting that Jimenez is the sort of attacker that they've elected to sign, if this story is to be believed. First of all, I think a legitimacy rating on this one of 5. I'm not having this one fully. I think that Sancho, we gave that about a legitimacy rating of 8 earlier this week. I can't remember what Phil gave it, but it looks like it's going to happen. They don't really need any more beyond that.
Yeah.
Like if you're looking for an attacker at the moment for Manchester United, you're looking for an attacker who can play on the left of a front three. If we're basing this purely on form, Marcus Rashford has been the man who has been in the worst form of that Manchester United attack. Now, Jadon Sancho, certainly, speaking personally, when I saw him coming to Manchester United, I thought, right, Jadon Sancho will play on the right of that front three. He has played on the left, and he has been outstanding on the left whenever he's played there. And I wonder if that's actually where he is going to play, and that it might actually be a battle between Rashford and Martial for the centre spot, and that the other person may actually get shunted out to the right for a battle with Mason Greenwood. That I actually think that they're quite well stacked in the middle, because I think they may have a battle internally for that jersey. I think Greenwood as well will be in with a shout for that jersey as well. Like, if you're talking purely on form, the person who is under most threat in that front three at the moment is Marcus Rashford. You would assume that things will level out as the next season resumes, and he will come back to his previous greatness, because his sustained start to his career was outstanding. Mentally, he is all there. He's so mature, but he has underperformed after the restart this season. So Martial's been brilliant, Greenwood's been brilliant. Who do you play alongside them if you were picking a team tomorrow? You'd love to have Sancho on the left of a three. They don't need Jimenez, and I'm giving that a legitimacy rating of only 5. Despite the fact that, as you say, Paulinho, he's gone to Wolves. He's been brilliant for Braga all year. A very, very similar replacement to Jimenez. Jimenez, I want to say, took a little bit of time to get going. Obviously was on loan last season. Outside of Bruno Fernandes, this signing of the season this year for any Premier League club, I think, when they got him permanently, I think they'd be stupid to let him go, first of all. But if they are, and if this story is to be believed, then Paulinho seems a good replacement.
Oh, we'll see how it all plays out. Rashford is the one that obviously is just an interesting one that, as you say, Martial probably has the edge at the minute, and you wonder from Marcus Rashford's point of view, if he's lower down the pecking order, does he hang around? You know what I mean? He's been in that position before, and now suddenly they're bringing in a couple more forward options.
Yeah.
And just maybe Rashford decides that, listen, I'm going to go somewhere that I'm going to get football.
Well, here's the thing. At the start of the season, certainly from the start of the middle third of the season, there was the debate about this, about whether or not the best version of Manchester United's attack is Martial through the middle or Rashford through the left. And there was a sense of appeasing Anthony Martial by playing him through the middle. He wasn't happy when he was playing out wide. And personally, I thought it was actually kind of weak management at the time, giving way to Martial and putting him in the middle. That was quickly proven wrong, especially after the restart, with how good Martial has been. But I wonder, privately, had there been a conversation with Marcus Rashford saying, are you happy to actually be shunted out to the left because we might get the best out of Anthony Martial? And Rashford goes, yeah, that's fine. And inadvertently, he shot himself in the foot with his own personal progression at Manchester United, because I think Rashford through the middle is quite a weapon. You've mentioned it there as well. I think that there is a battle for form when it comes to Rashford, but he's got his off-season now. My suspicion is that he will come back to how good he has been previously, and this is a blip rather than the norm.
And also, other news from Manchester, the Manchester News reporting that Inter are close to a permanent deal. This will be a huge relief for United fans, for Alexis Sanchez to finally get off their books for good. He's completed a season-long loan deal, so we'll monitor that as we progress. Big one for you here, Eoin. Sit tight. As Manchester United make all those moves, it seems like Arsenal have become the dark horses to lure Jack Grealish away from Aston Villa. It's according to Sky Sports News sources, which has become its own TV channel. They report that the Gunners registered their interest in the club's captain. This has got an Arsenal move all over it, hasn't it?
No, it doesn't.
A player that everybody's totally unsure of. He may be the greatest thing since sliced bread, and he may end up being Jack Wilshere. We're just not 100% sure exactly what direction his career is going to take place. Is he the world's greatest player, and we just haven't got to see that because he's in an underperforming team, or is he actually just made to be the latest Arsenal flop on?
Manchester United would be a perfect signing for Jack. This is the Manchester United signing. I don't know where you're getting the Arsenal trend here.
Legitimacy rating of him joining Arsenal. 3.
Arsenal haven't really gone out to sign the best young English kid who's already established. They tend to bring them up through their own ranks. Like the last time, I'm just trying to think here, where they actually splashed out and got involved in a bidding war for even a British youngster who ended up coming to Arsenal was probably Aaron Ramsey when Manchester United were coming. I'm not sure where you're getting it from, that this is a typical Arsenal signing. I presume you're talking about the perceived mentality of Jack Grealish, where
all the indicators are there that this is like the most Arsenal signing of all time
because of how he behaves off the pitch.
Because we're not sure about him. Is the point, right? Still at the end of the season, people are like, when Jack Grealish is coming in and out of games and is not necessarily yet living up to the hype. Maybe this is all to do with the fact that he's playing for a team that are just a shocking team and it's impossible to look good. Maybe that's what it is. But what I'm saying is that it's got an Arsenal signing all over it, because they end up bringing him in and he ends up actually proving to be not the player everybody thought he was.
No, you're getting this all wrong. You're basing this on the Unai Emery / end of Arsene Wenger era Arsenal decision. Have you listened to Mikel Arteta speak? He is Pep Guardiola, but with hair. Would Pep Guardiola sign Jack Grealish? No, he would not. There's your answer. Mikel Arteta would not stand for Jack Grealish.
Yeah,
and I sometimes feel that
Pep Guardiola wouldn't sign Jack Grealish because he's got uber millions to do whatever the hell he wants, and it's not the budget that Arteta has.
But I think it's also to do with discipline. To be honest, just for the record here, I think the media have been a little bit harsh. Not the media in general. I think maybe the tabloid coverage in the UK has been a little bit harsh of Jack Grealish at times. He's obviously made big mistakes, and maybe we are using that as a stick to beat him with when it comes to his own professionalism. Now, you may say that's fair enough. I think that if there is any bit of a doubt about that element of his commitment then he will not go to Arsenal. And I think actually a 3 in the legitimacy rating might be generous on that front. There was no way.
What's going to happen is he's going to join Arsenal.
No,
he's going to join Arsenal. He's going to get back on the hippie crack. He's going to himself and Guendouzi, who will still be at the club from the start of next season, was it Lacazette, are going to be training with the under-21s, and they'll be the best under-21 team on the planet.
Yeah, the under-23, they're okay at the moment. Like, I mean, he's already been stung by Guendouzi. He's going to get rid of him. The Mesut Ozil situation is a terrible, terrible, terrible thing. And that, like, I see news that he may be hanging around for another year, which is obviously terrible in itself. They can't be having this sort of gamble where they're taking a risk on a player who doesn't have an outstanding commitment to the cause, or even if it's a perception. I think that's enough for Arsenal to completely shelve this and don't look at it whatsoever. The most important piece of business they can do in that position this year would be to sell Mesut Ozil, but that's not going to happen. But it's also to keep Dani Ceballos and ensure that he stays at the club, and he is interested. Like, even as the sort of player that Jack Grealish is, does he fit into that Arsenal system? I'm not sure he does. Like, for me, Jack Grealish will thrive in a 4-2-3-1 formation. Arsenal have played it at times this season with Joe Willock sitting behind a striker. That would be the position for Jack Grealish, but I'm not sure if Arsenal are actually going to play that, because I think they're much better playing a 3-4-3. Jack Grealish, if he's going to go somewhere, I think Tottenham are top of the list, because they have played that formation. They've had a huge interest in the player down through the years, and maybe Jose Mourinho will think to himself, I kind of like this character who I can mould into my own team. He look at it from an opposite way.
No, he's not a Jose Mourinho player. A guy who flits in and out of games like that, he's not a Jose Mourinho player. He's going to end up doing a Gareth Bale on him.
He flits in and out of games because he plays for Aston Villa, I think. I think he genuinely is an outstanding talent.
And you think playing for Spurs is that this is the solution for that? I mean, I think legitimately rating of his potential move to Arsenal, I'm going to put it like a 9 out of 10. He's it's nearly nailed on that he's destined to go there and be a flop at a flop team. You mentioned Ozil, and a 10% chance on that he gets a contract extension.
No, 0%. Why would you give Mesut Ozil a contract extension? Where are you getting 10% from?
Just throwing it at you, just like plucking that one.
That would be the stupidest management move of the Arsenal hierarchy ever, and that is saying something.
We had some actual transfer business yesterday with Bournemouth accepting a 41 million quid bid from Man City for Nathan Ake. John Giles on last night said that Ake's a good player, but not a great player. And Pep needs great players. Is he right?
He is. He's not a great player at the moment, but again, he's been in Bournemouth shambles for the season that's been, so I think that is a bit harsh to judge any defender. It's interesting how we're getting into the minutiae of how accomplished a player is with which side of their body, especially when it comes to defenders over recent times. Like Jamie Carragher last night on Twitter saying, I like Nathan Ake and think he will suit Man City, but with Laporte a guaranteed starter, I'm not convinced 2 left-footed centre-backs works. I know right-footed players play together, but it never feels right the other way around to me. So it begs the question, if we take that into account, what are Chelsea doing when they have the buyback option? Kurt Zouma, right-footed. Rudiger, right-footed. Does Nathan Ake fit with either of them if they play a back four? Potentially he does. And with Chelsea in pole position to land this transfer, you'd wonder if they're sitting on their hands a little bit too much, considering they're splashing the cash on Timo Werner and are set to do so potentially on Kai Havertz as well, and have done so on Ziyech already. I think that this is a miss by Chelsea if they don't get in on Nathan Ake, but it looks like Manchester City have zoomed in front of them and have actually gazumped them on this front. John Giles is right that he's not a great player yet, but he's destined to become one with the right management. Now, Pep Guardiola has failed with accomplished defenders in the past, John Stones notably, or he has failed to turn decent defenders into great defenders. We thought John Stones was on that trajectory under Pep. Didn't happen. Same thing could easily happen with Nathan Ake.
It's farcical. That's deal or no deal.
I signed for them after the Euros, and after my first day's training, I was driving home. I was actually thinking, regretting it, what have I done? Like I walked into a circus. It's amazing, isn't it?
Adrian, thanks a million for everything this morning.
I look forward to more driving updates from you next week.
we shall do, we'll make it a weekly slot where I'll put a few drops of petrol in next time and come up with something different. That is it from OTB AM this morning. If you haven't got the OTB Sports app, go get it now. Search for OTB Sports and download it from your app store. Now, coming up on OTB Sports Radio today, we've got OTB Gold at 1 o'clock and at 6 o'clock, Friday Night Racing from 3 o'clock, and OTB Tonight on the radio as well from 7 o'clock. So from OTB this week, it's worth checking out Jake O'Donnell's brilliant reports on Kenyan athletics. Jake travels to Eton, Kenya for OTB Sports and the Simon Cumbers Media Fund. Also some very interesting pieces around the GPA and the GEA. Paul Flynn was with us on OTB AM yesterday. Donal O'Neill on the previous night with Joe, and Cahir O'Kane and Bernard Flynn joined us the day before that as well to chat about the GPA and the direction of the organisation over the next little while. All those podcasts available now on the OTB Sports app. We'll be back with you at 7:30 on Monday morning. Bye-bye for now.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
Off the ball.
Salah takes the shot. Oh!